Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps a lot, and it keeps these long stories going. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you sleep, feel free to tap the thanks button to support the channel. It truly means a lot. All right, let's get into it. I'm on the late shift, 2:14 a.m., and it's quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat through the hum of the cruiser's engine. Pine Grove Road cuts through nothing but darkness and trees for miles. My partner calls it the graveyard route, but honestly, it's just a back road next to the old Mercy Springs Clinic. Closed since '97. No trespassing signs rusted onto bent posts, peeling paint curled like dead skin. Nothing happens out here until tonight. Dispatch pings me with a 1023. Suspicious person reported near Mercy Springs. Jogger heard banging on the ambulance bay door. I've brushed off noise complaints before. Credit card machines clicking in ATMs, garbage cans rattling in a breeze. But something about the clinic gives me that twitch. I've been here twice before on false alarms. It didn't scare me then. I chalked it up to teenagers looking for thrills. Tonight I'm alone. Sergeant Harper picked up extra hours, and I'm restless. I flip on the overheads, roll down the window to let the whip of night air slap me in the face. The temperature's dropped. Condensation beating on the glass makes the street lamps look like halos in the fog. I round the last bend and the clinic comes into view. Low-slung concrete, mouth of a crumbling portico, vines licking at broken glass. The ambulance bay doors hang crooked, each panel gouged by something heavy. I park 15 feet back and kill the lights, only the red glow of the cruiser's tail lamps bleeding into the asphalt. I step out, boots crunching gravel, flashlight and service weapon drawn. The clinic smells like damp stone and rot, earth eaten by mold. I jog to the bay's edge and shine the light up. Door edges splintered outward, hinges torn clean. A window to the side is shattered. I knock, rattle. Nothing. I call, "State Patrol, anyone in there?" My voice cracks. Static echoes back, no answer. I slip inside. The beam lands on a row of rusted gurneys, straps frayed, wheels locked in place as if frozen. Each is caked with moss that's grown in thick webs, green as poison. The walls are slick with black mold, water stains creeping down toward the half-tiled floors. I step past a dented stretcher cart, hear a scraping, like metal dragging across concrete. I spin, but there's nothing. Just that low, persistent hum of the building settling. My radio crackles. "Patrol, be advised, call originated from a jogger. She's waiting at the service road entrance." Perfect. Company. I keep my light trained on the bay's interior while I back out. Gravel crunches, heart thudding, as I sprint toward the road. I find her, woman in full running gear, sweat darkening her tank top. She looks pale, lip quivering. "I heard pounding," she whispers, like someone inside, then sobbing. I nod, knot in my chest tightening. "Stay here, I'm checking it out." Back at the bay, I push the gurney aside, more scraping. Closer this time, right behind the cart. My flashlight beam jerks to the corner. A pallet of wooden crates stacked neat, like someone prepared for months of storage. I crouch to read the faded stenciled words. "Equipment do not discard." The bottom crate is cracked. I lean in, smell damp wood and something darker, copper, like fresh blood. I press my gloved fingertips to the slit in the crate. The wood gives, and I feel wet. I pull back, fight the flash of panic, standard trespassing. I radio dispatch. I'm in the ambulance bay. Found crates marked medical. They're damp. Requesting identification check, please. My voice sounds small on the air. I kick at the crate, it splinters. I shine the light inside and freeze. Rows of glass syringes. Their rubber plungers curled inward, needles intact. But each tray is stained with a thick, dark residue. I lean in, avoid gagging. The scent is acid-sharp, like bleach mixed with iron. A single vial sits apart, upright, label scratched off. I cup my fingers around it, lift gently. It's empty, though it rattles like it holds something. I set it down. The floorboards behind me creak. I whirl, gun up, light dancing over the faded ceiling tiles. No one. Yet. I step back through the bay into the night air. The jogger is gone. No footprints, no crunch of gravel. My radio crackles. Patrol? But I don't answer. The emptiness wraps around me, thick and silent. I return to the cruiser, leave the bay doors open like I'll be back. The engine roars to life, and I sit, light on the bay spilling into the road, staring at those crates and the smell that clings to my gloves. I drive off, siren silent, mind trying to sort facts from fear. Teenage prank? Medical waste someone dumped? Does someone still come here in the night? I jot mental notes, return with backup. Evidence bag that empty vial, squared away file for ongoing trespass. But the truth is, I don't want to come back. Not yet, not alone. Not after feeling breath brush the back of my neck when no one was there. I mark it as a noise report with hazardous materials possibility. I type the call log. Narrative. Officer responded to jogger's report of pounding at abandoned clinic. Inside bay, crates of medical equipment discovered. Dry residue undetermined. Jogger departed prior to officer arrival. No subjects located, requesting hazmat and backup. I hit send. The file vanishes into the digital void of police records. Tomorrow, someone will read my words and see an open and shut investigation. They won't smell the mold, won't feel the weight of those crates, won't hear the scraping behind them. I drive north on Pine Grove Road, headlights cutting through the mist. Mercy Springs recedes in the rear view. In my pocket, the empty vial rattles faintly, like a pulse. And I wonder, pulse of what? I pull into the station parking lot at 3:02 a.m., the orange glow of the lot lights casting long shadows across the asphalt. Backup hasn't arrived yet. Dispatch says they're tied up with a hit-and-run downtown. I slide out of my cruiser, flex my shoulders beneath the weight of duty belt, and push the bay doors closed on Mercy Springs. The metal grates shudder, screeching like fingernails on chalkboard. I flip off the overhead lights, leaving only the weak red beam of my taillights to mark the entrance. Inside, the station is sterile and humming. Computers blinking, dispatchers murmuring, coffee machines sputtering. I toss my keys on the console and unclip my flashlight. Sergeant Harper appears behind the counter, yawning. "What have you got?" he asks, voice thick as molasses. I spread my gloved hands, one spattered with mold spores, the other slick with that acidic residue. Crates of medical equipment in the ambulance bay, dry residue I can't ID. Runner reported pounding noises, but no one's there. Jogger vanished. Crate marked, "Do not discard." He narrows his eyes. Weird. Could be leftover supplies from decommissioning. There were 100 trucks hauling out gear back in '97. He taps at the keyboard, pulling up archived property receipts. Let's see. Mercy Springs decommissioned. They sold off surgical tools to 2 vendors. Everything else was incinerated. No crate listings. Nothing unaccounted for. A tremor of dread crawls up my spine. So who stashed this stuff? I whisper. The corridor lights flicker overhead. We exchange a look. He straightens. Hazmat crew should be here in 10. I'll ride with you back. He grabs his gear and falls in step behind me. The station doors swing open and we head into the night. We arrive at 3:47 a.m. The hazmat van's headlights carve arcs of light across the clinic's facade. Two techs in full suits unload gear: air pumps, sample vials, portable spectrometers. I lead them inside while Sergeant Harper secures the perimeter. The jogger never came back. No sign she left any footprints beyond her initial report. In the ambulance bay, the hazmat tech crouches by the cracked crate. His spectrometer hums, display flickering through chemical signatures. I keep my distance. The air tastes sour. He lifts a swab of the residue, slides it into a vial, and tags it. I'll test for pathogens, toxins, whatever. Stay back. His suit rustles as he moves to the next crate. I circle the bay, flashlight sweeping the damp walls. One panel of the south wall is newer. Different cement mix, fresher-looking patches. I kneel, touch the mortar, crumbly, damp beneath my glove. I shine the beam through the crack where the panel meets the floor. Beyond, I see a gap barely wide enough for a flashlight beam. Something glints. I clear my throat. "Hey, Vargas, step back." The tech nods, inching away. I wedge my fingers into the gap, push debris aside. My arm slides inside, brushing something cold, metal. I pull back a rusted door latch and twist. A section of wall swings inward like a trap door. I swing my light inside, a narrow shaft leading down, brick-lined and wet with mold. No stairs, no obvious way in, just darkness. My pulse quickens. "Sergeant?" His voice drifts through the open bay doors. Vargas says samples are clean so far, no biological hazards. I nod, but my throat's dry. I step closer to the opening. The shaft seems solid, no loose bricks. I unholster my radio. "Dispatch, I've found a hidden access panel in the ambulance bay wall. Shaft leading underground, no stairs visible. Request structural engineer and tactical unit." Static crackles. 10-4, ETA 10 minutes. I back away, close the panel, resecure the latch. My glove comes away slick with moisture and something else I can't name. I wipe it on my sleeve. There's a faint echo, a ragged breath reverberating from the shaft. I shine the flashlight at the panel's edges. No sign of forced entry other than my latch twist. Sergeant Harper arrives at my side. His flashlight uncovers a smear of dark fluid on the floor near the panel, foot-high scuff marks. They move toward the chamber, then vanish. He kneels, inspects them. These prints look partial. Whoever did this was crouching, sliding it open, then backing off. They didn't want to go down, just wanted an entrance that wouldn't show up on the cameras. We consult the clinic's blueprints on Harper's tablet. The shaft sits directly beneath the old pathology wing, an area sealed off years ago over safety concerns. Any entry there would bypass security cameras entirely. We look at each other, unspoken dread pooling in our chests. An insistent buzzing draws our attention. The spectrometer's readout: unknown compound. "This is weird," Vargas mutters. "It's not any regulated substance in my database." He labels more vials, then zips his suit. "I'm sealing this bay until we get more info." I nod, but my eyes drift to the sealed shaft. The echo of breath still trembles in my ears. We step out, bay doors clanging shut behind us. The hazmat van pulls away. Mercy Springs stands silent, looming in the mist. I climb back into my cruiser, the engine idling. Harper taps the wheel. "We're not done here," he says. "Something's under that floor." I swallow and close my eyes for a moment. Yeah. I hit the siren and roll down Pine Grove Road, leaving Mercy Springs and the sound of breathing in the walls behind. The next morning, sunlight feels wrong, harsh and accusing after the night's haze. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that ragged breath echoing from beneath the ambulance bay. My shift starts at 6 a.m., but I'm already in the briefing room at 5:45, coffee in hand, caffeine sliding over nerves. Sergeant Harper sketches a rough diagram of the clinic's layout on the whiteboard. Ambulance bay here, pathology wing sealed there, a hidden shaft connecting the two. The tactical unit's show-up time, 7:30. Structural engineer, 8 o'clock. County prosecutor wants details by noon. Everyone's got deadlines. I sit back and rub my temple. Reports stacking up. A juvenile stolen vehicle recovery downtown, a domestic disturbance in Pittman, midday traffic accident on Route 47. But my mind keeps drifting back to those crates, that single empty vial, and the faint whisper of breath from below. I glance at Harper, who's tapping his pen against the board, eyes distant. The tactical unit arrives first. 4 officers in ballistic vests, helmets slung, rifles slung across chests. Their captain, Lieutenant McAllister, is all business. "What do we know?" he demands. I run through basics: trespass report, crude medical crates, hazmat tests inconclusive, hidden panel, possible subterranean access. He nods, then motions to his team. "We'll secure perimeters above and below. No one enters until structural is here." They deploy to the clinic with military precision. My cruiser follows slower, lights off, as a Harper and I trail behind them. The morning mist clings to the building's sides, and the clinic appears even older, its scars from decades of neglect more pronounced in light. Peeling paint, broken windows, rebar poking through concrete like exposed nerves. Inside the bay, McAllister's team has already taped the area off. White crime scene tape flutters in a draft that shouldn't exist. I snap photos of the panel area, the scuff marks, the residues, the faint impression of footprints on the smooth concrete. I can't shake the thought. Someone low enough to crouch, careful enough to hide tracks. I crouch by the bricked-up panel, test the mortar. It offers no give, no fingerprints, no chipped bricks. Whoever sealed this patched it professionally, like they didn't want anyone to know the shaft was ever there. Then the first tremor, a low rumble from beneath my feet, like metal groaning in protest. The tactical guys raise weapons. "Everyone stand clear," Lieutenant McAllister barks. We step back as the structural engineer, a bespectacled woman named Ruiz, sets up seismic sensors around the bay. She nods to her assistant, who taps readings on a handheld device. After a minute, she frowns. Someone's moving down there. It's faint, but consistent. She places a microphone aperture over the panel edges, a soft analog hiss. Then, breathing. Slow, deliberate, measured. None of us says a word. She straightens. They're alive, or something is. I swallow. My throat's dry. "What do we do?" She calls out to McAllister. "If you want visual, you'll need a camera snake. And possibly drilling. But whatever's down there, it could be fragile." He turns, nods to his sergeant. "Get that camera, and secure the door upstairs." 20 minutes crawl by as they prepare. The camera snake, an armored cable with a lens at the tip, pumps into the shaft. Its feed shows only darkness for the first 6 feet. Then the beam strikes something. Glimmering metal. The camera pans, catching a row of hooks affixed to the brick wall, each holding a tattered strip of fabric. Hospital gowns, white with age but stained and torn. The lens trembles. Then it settles on a space. A low-ceiling cell carved into the basement wall. The beam catches a cot frame, stripped of mattress, bent at odd angles. The floor below is slick with moisture, and larger, darker stains that pulse red under the light. My pulse thunders in my ears. The camera tilts to one side, revealing an alcove. At first, I think I see a figure, a curled shape under a tattered gown. Then it shifts, a mannequin tossed aside. But the head turns, straight toward the camera, loose scalp myopathy, bone bleached white, eyes, no eyes, yet its gaze is fixed. The lens scratches backward, whip fast, then cuts out. The feed goes dark. Silence. Then static. Then Ruiz sighs. Camera's damaged. She tugs the cable back, its tip bent, smeared with red. None of us wants to speak. Lieutenant McAllister's voice is low. What was that? I step forward, voice shaking. That wasn't a mannequin. My stomach twists. That looked like something placed there, and eyes carved out. Harper rubs his jaw. Why would someone set a dummy with no eyes in a hidden cell? Who? No one answers. The breathing continues, but now it sounds deeper, labored. It echoes through the shaft like a living specter. Suddenly, the lights go out. Warning sirens from the clinic's emergency generator kick in. High-pitched buzz that makes my skin prickle. In the red glow of backup lights, we see the storm shutters at the windows have slammed shut. No breeze, no operator, just metal doors clanging in unison. I grip my flashlight tighter. The echoing breath grows louder, closer, like it's rushing up the shaft. "Evacuate," McAllister orders. In the harsh light, I see tracks in the mud on one of the gurneys, smeared across the floor leading back to the cell. We rush out, stamping on the bloody footprints, foot-high scuff marks, but they reappear, as though they're fracturing into the concrete itself. Outside, the morning sun is fully up, but I don't feel any relief. The crew packs up fast, hauling cameras, sensors, cysts of unused evidence bags. We step away from Mercy Springs, and I watch that shaft's sealed panel, now reinforced with a steel plate. Harper claps me on the shoulder. "That's all for now," he says, voice tight. "We'll return with a full warrant." I nod, but I keep my eyes on that wall, and on the hazmat markers still peeling off the crates behind us. As we load into the cruisers, I choke out, "Why were the gowns there?" "Who?" I trail off. No answer. We drive away, but the clinic remains, looming under a pale sky. In my pocket, the shapes of the camera bits graze my leg, cold reminders of something waiting down below. And I know one thing. We didn't hear the worst of it yet. We come back 2 days later, and the damp chill of Mercy Springs hits me like a fist in the gut. It's 5:30 p.m. Golden hour light slants through broken windows, but inside those corridors everything feels gray, muted. I sit in my cruiser eating granola bars, while Sergeant Harper speaks quietly with County Prosecutor Neal over the phone. The warrants signed, search and seize, everything inside. Evidence to be cataloged, no room for mistakes. I finish the bar, break off the last crumb. The taste is stale. I throw the wrapper in the cup holder and step out into the foyer. The morning's bustle has been replaced by afternoon's eerie calm. Dust motes drift in sunbeams, swirling around fallen ceiling tiles. I pull on latex gloves and jack inside for the squad. Harper follows, flashlight in one hand, duty pistol at his hip. Every step echoes, boom, boom, like someone walking with us, just out of sight. Lieutenant McAllister's tactical team is already inside the ambulance bay, rifling through the crates that remain. They're sealed behind crime scene tape, but the contents are being documented. Trays of glass jars, broken beakers, coiled tubing spattered with faded fluid. And that one vial, the empty green vial we recovered last week, sits alone, labeled Sample A. It rattles in its evidence bag like a heartbeat. I hear it and wince. "Officer Banks," McAllister calls, voice low. "We need to examine that panel again. Engineer Ruiz says she can reinforce the brackets so we can open it safely. We're breaking in tonight." He taps his black ops watch. "Once it's dark, we go in." I nod, because at this point no one else volunteers. We clear the bay, tape off a larger perimeter, half the clinic locked down. Residents 2 blocks away must be wondering why half the county's swarming this place. No matter, we need answers. I wander over to the hallway that leads to the sealed pathology wing. The door there is gapped slightly, serrated edges where the latch was forced. I run my gloved finger down the jagged steel, cold, rough, like a warning. I look up to the fluorescent lights dangling from wires, some flickering, some off entirely. The silence is fat, pregnant. Behind me, a hazmat tech hunches over the crates, stirring up a cloud of dust that catches in the beam. He sneezes into his suit. I step back. The residue on the floor is now swabbed and bagged. Unknown compound, sample B. It's going for lab analysis. Maybe it'll tell us what we're dealing with. But I feel it in my lungs. The smell of rot and bleach and something else I can't name. I cough, hack, swallow hard. Harper catches my eye. He tilts his head toward the shaft panel. I grip my flashlight handle tighter. Every time I think about that shaft, my heart hammers against my ribs. Who was down there? Whatever it was, the tape over the camera was smeared red. Not blood, something darker, thicker. I shudder. Lieutenant McAllister approaches with Engineer Ruiz, who's carried her toolkit in a weatherproof case. She unloads metal bracing, hydraulic spreaders, a battery-powered drill. "We're reinforcing this side first," she explains, pointing to the bay wall. "Then we'll support the bricks and open the hatch. But be warned, the shaft may not be safe to enter. We could collapse the floor if we're careless." McAllister nods. "Understood. Bring in the tactical medic and the rescue rig. No one goes alone." He looks at me and Harper. "You two stay at perimeter until we confirm it's stable. Then one of us will go down with cameras." I glance at Harper. His jaw is clenched, eyes grim. He nods once. We slip back into the corridor, back behind tape. From here, we're spectators. Guests at a crime scene that keeps its worst secrets in the underbelly. The afternoon drags. The drill whines, bricks scrape, metal groans. Every so often, Ruiz leans in to check levels. Sparks sputter from the drill bit. I count the minutes on my watch. 7 p.m. sunset, and Mercy Springs yawns in deep shadows. Finally, the new steel frame is in place. Ruiz wipes sweat from her brow. "Okay, ready on my mark." She sets her ear protection, counts down. 3, 2, 1. The drill bites into the mortar along the hatch's edges. Chunks of brick fall. A plume of dust rises. Then a metallic click. The panel shifts inward. A narrow wedge of darkness appears. The team around me holsters weapons and grabs flashlights. McAllister calls out, "Stack up." He counts off. Medic, comms specialist, 2-point men, then the technologist with the camera snake. He slips on knee pads and grips the cable. No one breathes. We hear only the whine of the generator powering the drill, then silence as it shuts off. McAllister presses his hand against the hatch rim and lifts it fully. The panel swings inward with a groan. I see the lip of the shaft, crumbling brick beneath. The air that escapes smells fetid, like damp earth and old blood. The camera snake is lowered first. The lens flares into the shaft, illuminating slick walls blossoming with black mold. Water drips rhythmically from above, plink plink, into pooled puddles on a ledge 6 feet down. The beam sweeps slowly. The cot, gurneys discarded like toys, half-melted plastic tubing draped over hooks. The stained hospital gowns flutter as the cable moves. Then it stops. The lens focuses on a dark shape in the corner. At first, I think it's a shadow. Then it's unmistakable, a human body. Legs limply bent, ankles crossed, clothed in a tattered gown. The torso is slumped forward, head lolling. I feel bile rise in my throat. The image goes blurry, cable bumping into the cot frame. We hear the camera's motor straining as it tries to retreat. The feed cuts out. Rusted laughter bubbles in my mind. No one's human enough to laugh at that. It's the shaft's bloodshot joke. The hatch slams. Someone above moved it without command. Boom. The team is startled, shouts. What the hell? I sprint forward with Harper, guns drawn, flashlights swinging. The shaft is empty. Beyond the cot, the body is gone. No sign of it, no slick stains, nothing but the faint jade glow of the mold. A single hospital slipper lies on the floor, toes bent upward, sole scuffed, and that smell, stronger now, like something seeping up through the cracks. Harper's voice is fierce. Sweep it! Find whoever did this! Tactical guys split, moving up the corridor, guns up. We follow. The corridor stretches ahead in fractured light. The rustle of clothing, like someone fleeing through the service tunnel, bars our pursuit. Fragments of whispered words drift through the air. Go, pain, forget. But too low to make sense. We hit the service tunnel door. It's locked. No exit. Behind us, the bay is sealed. We're trapped in a labyrinth of broken tile and buzzing lights. The radio crackles. Officer down. The medic's voice calls for backup at the bay. We rush back. Lights flicker. Doors slam in the distance. At the bay entrance, Lieutenant McAllister is shouting into his radio, tension coiling in his shoulders. The medic stands over the collapsed figure of camera tech Alvarez. He's pale, breath shallow. Something grabbed him, the medic says. Felt cold, like metal teeth. Alvarez shakes, crawls away, eyes wild. McAllister barks orders, get him out, lock it down. Harper and I help carry Alvarez away. He mutters, it's down there, waiting, before he's whisked off. I stand at the bay threshold, gripping the hatch frame, staring down into the gaping shaft. The single slipper lies at the edge, smudged heel pointing toward the open panel. Rain starts outside, tapping on the roof. The flickering bay lights reflect off the puddles on the floor. And I swear, beneath the rain's steady drip, I hear the faintest thud of footsteps receding deeper, deeper into the clinic's guts. Tonight, we don't go back. We don't have a choice. We retreat. Because Mercy Springs won't give up its secrets easily. The unanswered things, rotting bodies, scrambled messages, that half-formed gasp of air remain below where the shadows feast. We drive out in silence. The clinic stands behind us, battered and breathing, its corridors hungry for the next soul to wander in. And I know the slipper won't stay alone for long. Someone, or something, will collect it and carry weeping echoes into the dark. I don't remember sleeping that night, or if I did, it was restless dreams of peeling paint and whispers crawling through ventilation shafts. At 4:26 a.m., my phone buzzed, Sergeant. Harper's name flashing. We found something. My heart thudded as I bolted upright. I texted him back, heading in. 5 minutes later, I was in the cruiser, lights off, the road desolate, fog rolling off the fields. Mercy Springs loomed like a wounded animal under the pale moonlight. At the perimeter gate, the crime scene tape had been replaced. Thicker, security grade, stretched taut between metal posts. A sign. Authorized personnel only. Below it, scrawled in black marker, you can't forget. I skimmed my gloves over the letters. my breath clouded in front of me. I followed the path to the ambulance bay where the hollow echo of last night's chaos still lingered. The bay doors were closed and bolted, but the latch had been cut. Fresh pry marks on the metal. I slid my hand into my coat pocket, fingers brushing the grip of my Glock. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. I called through the crack in the door. "Police! Who's inside?" No answer. Only a low groan from the building itself, as though it were settling in for another sleepless night. I kicked the door open. It banged against the wall with a dull clang. Inside, the bay was empty. No team, no crates, no photographer's blood-smeared tools. The only light came from my flashlight, carving circles into the darkness. The floor was littered with debris, splintered wood, shards of glass, and among them a single white hospital slipper, its pair still missing. I shined the beam across the floor, searching for footprints. None. The slipper lay alone, upright, as if waiting for its other half. My radio crackled. "Banks, what's your 20? Sergeant Harper's voice was low, shaky. "I'm at the bay. It's empty. Again." I swallowed, the ghost of last night's fear tightening my gut. "Stand by. I'll meet you at the lobby." I stepped past the bay into the main corridor, faded vinyl tiles beneath my boots, half covered by peeling linoleum. The air tasted damp, metallic. I moved through the hallway, past rooms I'd never enter willingly. Pediatric ward with small beds rusted and snapped, peeling murals of cartoon animals dangling from the walls, their colors faded to ash. The farther I went, the colder it got. My breath fogged in front of me like I'd wandered into a freezer. Around the corner, I saw footprints in the condensation on a door marked "Restricted." The prints were barefoot, skinny toes, long arches. They led around the door, across the linoleum, then vanished into the wall itself. My flashlight swept the seam where the tiles met the wall. There, a narrow crack, barely perceptible, exactly where the prints stopped. I pressed my palm against the crack, cold, damp. I ran my fingers along it, pushing until the wall gave a hair's breadth. Before I could decide what to do, a voice came, soft and ragged, as if from far away. "Please, help!" It was different from the whispers I'd heard before. This one carried a tremor, like a child's cry muffled by thick walls. My chest clenched, and I knew what it was. I fit my shoulder against the wall and pushed. A panel slid inward, swinging on hidden hinges. Behind it was a narrow crawl space, maybe 2 feet high, with a rough dirt floor. The air that billowed out was rank, like rot and wet earth. The voice repeated, sharper this time. "Help me." I glanced back down the corridor. The slipper lay at the bay's mouth, glowing white in the dark. And somewhere in the distance, I heard the slow creak of a gurney wheel turning. It was subtle, just a sigh of metal against concrete, but it carried intent. I drew my weapon and slipped into the crawlspace, pulling the panel shut behind me. The crawlspace was tight, dirt walls and low rafters coated in mold. My flashlight beamed ahead, revealing a sloping tunnel that descended at a 10-degree angle. Water dripped from unseen cracks, and the air buzzed with the scuttle of something crawling just beyond the light's reach. I crawled forward, breath catching as the voice grew louder, more desperate. "Please." At the end of the tunnel, I reached a low archway carved into the foundation's support. Beyond was a small room, maybe 10 by 8 feet, illuminated by a single flickering bulb hanging from exposed wiring. In the center sat a metal chair bolted to the floor. Restraints on the arms and legs, broken and twisted as if someone had struggled free. Next to it, a small table held an empty tray and a scattered pile of patient charts, each labeled with faded names. None matched any record I'd ever seen. On the far wall, a figure crouched, back to me, shoulders shaking. My radio felt heavy in my pocket. My finger hovered over the trigger as I approached. The figure was small, maybe slight as a teenager. It wore a hospital gown, stained and torn. Long hair matted, streaked with mud. The person slid from the wall and turned. I froze, eyes wide. There was no face, just scar tissue stretching over bone. Eye sockets empty cavities. The skin was pulled tight, raw where it had split and been crudely stitched. It held out a bony hand, its nails jagged. Whispers flooded my mind, unintelligible syllables that pricked at my sanity. The figure's voice came again, distorted. "I'm here. Don't forget me." My heart hammered. I dropped to one knee. "Officer Banks," I said, voice trembling. "I'm here. You're safe now." But the figure didn't move. It stood perfectly still. Then, with its free hand, it pointed toward the door I'd crawled through. Behind me, the tunnel's entrance sealed itself, panels sliding back into place. I spun, shouting into the darkness. My flashlight flickered. The bulb overhead buzzed, then popped, plunging the room into near pitch black. My backup was far away. My radio was silent. I was alone in the dark with something not entirely human, clutching a torn chart labeled Patient 316, missing. It stared, mouth opening, emitting a chorus of raspy breaths that filled the small space. I rose, backing toward the archway. My gloved hand slid along the wall, searching for the latch I had used. My other hand kept the light trained on the figure. The bulb sputtered, then came back to life, revealing the figure inches from me, a skeletal silhouette against damp stone. I flipped on my radio, voice unnaturally calm. "Dispatch. Officer needs immediate rescue at Mercy Springs basement tunnel." It clicked off again. No response. I pulled my phone to dial for help. No signal. My stomach twisted. I was trapped. The figure stepped forward, knees creaking, voice a chorus. "Don't go. Stay with me." It reached out, fingertips brushing my arm, cold as wet concrete. I forced my eyes to its face, to the empty sockets. I thought of the jogger's footsteps, the footprints on the gurneys, the empty crates, the missing hand, and I realized the truth. Mercy Springs never forgot its patients. It never released them. They're here, in the dark, waiting for someone to remember. I kicked at the wall, struggling to pry, the panel sliding latch. The figure moaned, its voice melting into pleading silence. "Remember me." My flashlight trembled, casting its beam across the figure's chest, where a single chart fluttered, words half legible. "I will not be unseen." Then the panel gave way, swinging outward just as the figure lunged. I scrambled into the tunnel, heart pounding, light shaking. Behind me, I heard the snap of that tortured sigh, like a chair dragging across the floor. I raced the crawl space, hands scraping dirt, until I burst into the ambulance bay. Sergeant Harper and Lieutenant McAllister were waiting, shining lights at the bay doors. Relief washed through me as I scrambled to my feet, covered in dirt. They yanked the doors open and I tumbled into the cold night air. "Got you!" Harper shouted, grabbing my arm. I gasped for breath. The team poured through the entrance, weapons drawn, scanning the bay. But it was empty. No tunnels, no cages, no patient charts. Just that one slipper, lying on the cracked floor where I'd first seen it. The other was still missing. I sank to my heels, exhausted. They wrapped me in a blanket. The jogger always called these noise orders. I realized now they were cries for help from the forgotten. Mercy Springs wasn't just abandoned, it was haunted by what we left behind. The final image burned into my mind, that faceless patient, pointing to the latch, whispering, "Don't forget me." Everything after that night is a blur of bright lights, antiseptic smells, and voices that don't belong to me. I woke up strapped to a gurney in the county hospital. EMTs said I'd collapsed from dehydration and shock in the ambulance bay. My head throbbed, memory frayed at the edges. They patched my scrapes and tested me for toxins. Nothing showed up. When I asked how I got there, they said I was found curled against the bay doors, muttering about missing patients. They sent me home with orders: rest, follow-up, and, most importantly, a debrief with internal affairs at 8 a.m. the next day. They washed the crawlspace walls, bricked up the panel, and sealed the tunnel entrances. Evidence tags slapped over every room's door. A contractor team poured fresh concrete at every suspected entrance. Mercy Springs looked even more lifeless. I stayed upstairs in the fluorescent glare of IA's interrogation room, replaying my words to two blank-faced agents. "Officer Banks, you're describing events that leave no trace," one scribbled. "Basement searches, and you claim a panel opened itself. No video, no footprints. What are you hiding?" I leaned forward. "I'm not hiding anything. I paused, the weight of that thing's plea in my ears. I saw someone in a hospital gown, stitched, eyes gone, patient charts, a chair with restraints, cryptic messages, 'I will not be unseen.'" They exchanged glances. The lead agent closed his notebook. "No records of any tunnels. No missing person investigations tied to Mercy Springs since '97. This building's been vacant. You're a good cop, Banks, but if there's no evidence, it didn't happen. Understand?" I nodded, throat tight. They let me go. I left the station, wondering if they thought I'd lost my mind. My cruiser's engine rumbled to life, the dash clock reading 9:45 a.m. I drove past Mercy Springs on my way home. Its walls scrubbed clean, windows boarded, a new sign posted: "Proposed demolition site." I blinked. The bay doors were welded shut, no evidence of hinges. No trace of last night's slipper or scuff marks, just brick and metal. In the weeks that followed, I checked the records. Demolition permit filed 3 days ago. The building's on the schedule for next month. No mention of any homicide, no hazardous waste violation, nothing in the logs beyond routine maintenance requests. I asked Harper. He told me county higher-ups got nervous, lawyers pushing to close the case. "They want this place gone," he said, voice low. "No one wants those patients coming back to light." I tried to erase it, burned the photos of the shaft, deleted the vial sample from my home safe. But every night when I lay down, I see that faceless figure in the dark. I hear that rasping plea, "Remember me," and I feel the cold hand dragging along my skin. About 2 weeks ago, I was dispatched to check on a vandalism report. Someone spray-painted the old Mercy Springs gate. I drove out alone. The gate's concrete posts bore fresh graffiti, "Forget Me Not," in dripping black letters. Beneath it, someone had taped a faded patient chart. No name, just the number 316. I knelt and touched it. Ink raised, skin slick. My phone buzzed. Caller ID. "Unknown," I answered. All I heard was breathing, slow, deliberate. Then a whisper. "I'm still here." I dropped the phone, stumbled back when the chart tore itself free and drifted to the ground, fluttering like a trapped heartbeat. I backed away, my radio in hand, but no signal. My eyes darted across the gate, scanning for a person. No one. Just the empty road, the mist curling around the post. That night, I slept in my clothes. I set the alarm on my phone for every hour, to check for missed calls, text messages, anything. But the only notifications are reminders. Officers debrief, follow-up x-ray, routine patrol. Nothing about tunnels, no mention of crying voices, no records of missing hands or mannequins. Then last week, I got a package at my door, no return address. Inside, a single eyelid, preserved in a glass jar, floating in clear fluid. No note. My vomit soaked the hallway. I shattered the jar on the tile, blood splattering like warning signs. I crumpled against the wall, shaking. The fragments of glass glinted in the streetlight. I picked one up, smudged my thumb across it, and saw my face, reflected, pale and hollow. I called Harper. He answered on the second ring. "I got it too," he said immediately. An envelope with a dried lung lobe. No note. His voice was tight. "We're not alone, Banks." He paused. "They're still here." We agreed to meet by the old gate tomorrow night. 2 officers, unarmed, not official, just survivors. We're going to open it up again. I don't know if the panel's still there, if the tunnel remains, or if what we find will save us or destroy us. But I have to know. I have to answer that whispered plea, because if I don't, they'll come for me. We meet at 11:17 p.m., 2 silhouettes under the flickering sodium lamp at the old Mercy Springs entrance. The iron gate lies half ajar, the concrete posts still bearing the words, "Forget Me Not," scrawled in dripping black spray paint. I've got gloves on, flashlight in one hand, pry bar in the other. Harper stands beside me, breathing visible in the cold air, badge clipped loosely to his coat. Both of us off the clock, unarmed. Nothing but determination and a bad feeling in our guts. He nods once. No words, just the understanding that tonight we go back in for better or worse. I slip through the gate first. The boards over the front door have been pried aside, splinters carpeting the threshold. I step in, flashlight beams skating over the lobby's dusty floor. Leaflets for defunct clinic hours, a shattered reception desk, mushrooms sprouting from water-stained drywall. Every breath tastes of mildew and regret. We move through the main hallway in silence, boots echoing, toward the ambulance bay. My phone's compass app flickers. We're tracking due north, just like the shaft entrance should be. The walls here are scrubbed clean, no tape, no markers. Yet I know the hollow panel lies somewhere behind this plaster. I kneel beside a section of wall that looks subtly newer. I trace its perimeter, straight edges, drywall seams that don't match the older plasterboard. I tap lightly, hollow sound. "Here," I whisper. Harper brings his light down. I press the pry bar into the seam and push. The panel swings open smoothly without a screech, just like before. Inside, the crawlspace yawns, waiting. I shrug off my coat and peel back the plastic sheeting someone hung to hide it. The crawlspace entrance is damp, lower than I remember. Mold crawling 6 inches higher than when I last saw it. We switch on headlamps and squeeze inside, the air immediately colder, thicker, like breathing underwater. Harper leads, knife flashlight in one hand, breath coming in shallow gusts. I follow, chest tight. The tunnel feels longer this time, the walls slimy with condensation. Each drip echoes in the beam's cone. Something shuffles ahead, a scurrying that could be rats or something else. Harper halts. "Did you hear that?" he rasps. I nod. We press on at a walk, boots disturbing loose earth, until we reach the low archway into the hidden chamber. I shine my light inside. The metal chair with its broken restraint sits in the center, empty. The table is gone. Patient charts no longer litter the floor. Instead, one chart hangs from a nail in the far wall, swinging gently, like a pendulum in slow motion. Its number, 316. The same as before. But now, beneath the number, a date is scribbled in fresh ink. May 30th, 2025. Tonight's date. Harper's breath catches. He points to a second chart pinned beside it. Officer Banks, with my badge number and the time. 11:17 p.m. Beneath that, in a different hand, a single line. Thank you for remembering. My head swims. I step closer. The chart is thick with moisture, edges curling. I reach out, fingers grazing ink, cold, wet. I recognize my own handwriting on the lower edge, the initials I scribbled when I logged the first crate. But the main entries were blank until now. I pull the chart down and unfold it fully. My name, my home address, the date I was born, and a new entry. Now, part of Mercy Springs. A low creak makes us both spin toward the tunnel entrance. The panel we entered through is now sealed solid, no seam, no hinges. It's as though the wall swallowed itself. The only exit is back through the chamber's doorway, but that arch is walled in, bricks fresh, mortar still damp. When did this happen? How? Harper lunges at the wall, fists pounding, dust plumes. He yells, "Let me through!" The bricks don't budge. The air grows heavy as though compressed by unseen weight. My head pounds. A whisper curls around the beam of my flashlight. Welcome home. We back away, hearts hammering. In the chamber's dim glow, I see movement at the edge of the light, shapes emerging from the shadows. Rows of bodies slumped against the walls, wearing hospital gowns that match the ones we saw before. Their faces are half hidden, eyes empty pits reflecting our lights. They shuffle forward as one, unsteady. Harper grabs my arm. Run! But the only way out is the sealed arch. I spin, breathless, desperation clawing at my throat. The whispering grows louder, a chorus of disembodied voices. You belong here. Don't forget us. The bodies close in, dragging thin fingers across their own chests, as though forming words on their skin. I shine my light on the ground. There, 5 slippers, each mismatched pair discarded around the chair. The 6th slipper is gone, replaced by my boot, positioned precisely where the empty panel latch should be. My heart seizes. I recognize its scuff marks from my first entry, but how did it get here? One figure reaches out, skeletal fingers brushing my hand. I jerk back, stumble, and my light lingers on her chart, pinned beside mine. Section 7, completed. Underneath, in the same fresh ink, see you soon. I spin again, the arch wall creaks. Mortar dust falls as bricks begin to shift outward. Sunlight, bloody red, pours in from above, illuminating the gurneys and the rusted tools scattered across the floor. The bodies drift back, parting in a silent corridor that leads upward. Harper squeezes my shoulder. This way, he whispers, voice shaky. We move toward the opening, stepping over bodies whose gazes linger on us like promises. Slivers of daylight dance on wet tile. We slip through the newly formed passage, hands clawing at edges as we climb. It feels endless, each foot up feeling like pulling ourselves from quicksand. Finally, a burst of cold night air. Outside, beyond the boarded windows, the parking lot lights glow faintly. We scramble through a hole in the lobby wall, collapsing onto gravel. Our breaths come in ragged gasps. The chart, Officer Banks, bursts into flames in my hand, black smoke curling toward the sky. I drop it into the weeds. The fire burns with an unnatural blue flicker before snuffing out, leaving only ash. Behind us, Mercy Springs stands silent, its windows dark. As we stagger away, I glance back and swear I see the building exhale, an exhalation of rotting air that carries a soft, familiar whisper, "You remembered us." And in the night, I realize there was never a way out. They never left Mercy Springs, and now neither will I. It was supposed to be a simple trespass call, just some kid and his friend sneaking into the old Westgate clinic after hours to prove they weren't scared. I pulled up at 2:14 a.m., headlights cutting through a low mist that clung to the cracked asphalt of the lot. The sign above the front entrance was faded to white on gray, the letters Westgate Clinic barely legible. I killed the engine and unshouldered my flashlight. The beam wobbled in my hand, reflecting off shattered panes and the dented ambulance bay doors. I clipped the light to my belt and stepped onto broken pavement strewn with debris. An empty syringe here, a rusted scalpel there. The damp air smelled of rot and something like burned plastic. I ducked under the low-hanging awning and called out, "Police! You kids out here? Come on out with your hands up." Silence. The only reply was the echo of my voice bouncing down the hallway beyond the main doors. I forced the front door open. It had been propped ajar by someone's boot. Inside, the foyer was cavernous. Peeling tile walls, half-melted ceiling tiles hanging like lazy clouds, and a reception desk overturned, drawers spilling yellowed forms. My boot scuffed along the linoleum, and I realized the predators of silence here weren't animals. They were memories. I flicked on my flashlight and started down the corridor where I'd seen the infrared flicker of a camera in the security office. A dozen doorways led into examination rooms. In one, broken exam tables were littered with pieced-together charts. The patient's name block was gone. The writing beneath, once pristine cursive, was smeared. I lifted the chart and saw a date, September 12, 1997. The ink was red. I closed it. Faint clicks echoed ahead, like fingertips strumming along metal. My heart kicked. I drew my sidearm and edged forward, counting steps. Past the nurse's station, I came to the broken glass of the psychiatric wing entrance. The security keypad was cracked. Wires dangled. Someone had ripped it off the wall. Behind that, the hallway stretched long and dark, the floor littered with shards of fluorescent bulbs. I smelled mildew and something sweeter, like antiseptic mixed with decay. A door at the end cracked open with a groan when I passed, as if pushed by a breath. I froze. "Come out," I called, voice brittle. My breath fogged in the air. Crackling whispers slithered through ventilation shafts overhead. I could almost make out words. "Here, please." But it wavered, gone in an instant. I holstered my weapon. My hands shook too badly to aim straight, and stepped into the room. It was an old trauma bay, gurneys on either side, their wheels rusted like tombstones. A single floodlight over the operating table cast a stark cone of white. In the center lay a man. His shirt was soaked, dark red, and half of his face was obscured by a mask I recognized from supply, the kind you'd use to break a fever. The other half was pale, slack. He didn't move. I crouched, pressing my gloved hand to his neck. No pulse. I stood up so fast I bumped the table. A tool cart beside me rattled. I cursed, heart slamming. Why would the kids fake something this grim? I spun, light scanning the perimeter. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, behind me. I spun back to the table. Empty. The man was gone. My flashlight slipped to my side as I reached for my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I need backup at Westgate Clinic. Possible fatality. Unidentified male." The radio squealed, then went silent. No reply. I raced back into the corridor. The smell of blood, fresh, drifted from an open doorway to my left. I stepped inside. A nurse's charting desk was overturned. The doctor's drawers flung wide, files strewn. I picked up one. Jenny Alvarez, psych eval, October 4th, 1997. Patient discharged. Beneath it, a second paper, handwritten, "Do not release. Containment breach imminent. No date. The hallway lights flickered. Something skittered across the tile ahead. I edged forward, shaking the flashlight upward. In the beam, a figure slumped in the corner beneath a broken floodlight. A woman, mid-30s, lab coat torn, hair clumped in wet tangles. She stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. I raised my voice. "Ma'am, are you okay? It's the police." My voice cracked. She didn't respond. Something glistened in her hand. I approached slowly, flashlight trembling. She held up a clipboard, the back hinged at an odd angle. The front cover, where patient records would be, was gone. Instead, the board was slick with dark streaks. "Help," she croaked, voice low. "They never left." I reached to take the clipboard. She jerked it inside, the board snapping like a twig. I flinched, pulling my hand back. She smashed it against the floor. Papers fluttered out, patient names I didn't recognize, notes filled with cryptic shorthand. OCD scribbles, words like scream, and doors locked from inside. I blinked and looked up. The woman was gone. My radio crackled behind me. I grabbed it. "Unit 7, what?" Static. Then, "All units respond to a 1020 at the West Ambulance Bay, Westgate Clinic. Possible hostage." My skin prickled. I turned and ran, every step echoing. I burst through the double doors and into the bay where my headlights skidded across broken glass. In the center stood 2 police cruisers. Their lights bathed the mist in red and blue strobe. The bay doors rattled as if held at the top by fingers I couldn't see. I jogged forward. The floodlight overhead flickered on, revealing gurneys stained with old rust and new blood. And there, leaning against one, was that same nurse. She craned her neck to look at me, eyes too bright. A thin line of drool ran from her lips. I raised my flashlight, but it died, plunging everything into darkness. In the silence, I heard her whisper, just beneath the drip of a leaking pipe. They never left. Then the bay doors slammed shut. The radio chatter faded as I leaned against my cruiser, heart pounding like a warning bell. Backup units fanned out, flashlights slicing through the mist. I wiped sweat from my brow despite the chill. Westgate's bay doors remained locked tight, and every echo felt alive. I tried the keypad again. It still sparked when I touched it, wires fraying like exposed nerves. Behind me, a patrol officer shouted as his flashlight swept past a toppled gurney. We converged, guns drawn, flashlights trained on the bay's far corner. In that wavering beam lay another body, a teenager, his school jacket identifiable even beneath the darkness. He lay face down, arms splayed, boots inches from the rusted ambulance ramp. My stomach clenched. He'd bled through his jacket, but the wound wasn't fresh. It was too clean, too precise, like a surgical incision. I knelt, twisting him gently. His eyes fluttered open for a second, empty, unfocused, then closed. His lips parted in a silent plea that twisted my gut. He tried to speak, but only a rasp escaped. "Help," he mouthed. But no breath followed. I radioed dispatch. "Unit 7, 1 male, teen down, location bay, possible homicide." My voice quavered. There was no reply. A sudden clatter made us spin. An ambulance, one of those ancient leftover models, sat half inside the bay, doors swinging on broken hinges. Its interior was dark, shadows pooling beneath the ceiling lights. No siren, no engine, just that unsettling hush. An officer slammed a flashlight through the driver's window, glass cracking. Inside, no one. But the bench seat was stained, like someone had sat there bleeding. I pressed my palm to the windshield. Sticky residue clung to my glove. Then I saw it. Footprints leading from the patient door back to the passage into the clinic proper. "Hold this," I said, handing off my radio. I followed those footprints, the beam slicing through the darkness. The prints went into the clinic's main hall, first a single set, then overlapping others. Some were civilian sneakers, some heavy boots. Mixed in, bare footprints, the arch imprint unmistakable, pressed deep into the dust as though someone had purposely walked there. I paused at a cracked window overlooking the ambulance bay. Through the gloom, shadows shifted. 2 figures stalking along the outer wall, disappearing into the darkness. They moved too deliberately for trespassing kids, more like predators tracking prey. I backed away and ducked through the clinic doors. Down the hall, lights flickered on their last breaths. I heard a low groan, like the building itself complaining. My flashlight caught a smear of blood on the wall, handprint shaped, palm spreading into a grim petal. Below it, graffiti in jagged black. "They don't leave." I swallowed, heart slamming. Voices ahead, conflicting tones. One male, urgent, one female, pleading. I crept forward, angling around the exit sign's flicker. In the doorway of a supply room, I saw them. A man, holding a rifle-stocked flashlight, arms locked. A woman huddled against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees, crying. The man barked, "Stay down!" "Cops are coming!" I raised my hands. "Police, drop the gun!" But as I stepped into the beam, the woman bolted past me, sprinting into the darkness of the hallway. The man hesitated, then swung his flashlight rifle toward me, finger on the trigger. "Officer," he shouted, voice tight. "She'll kill herself if she sees anyone. She's hurting. Please, help her." His eyes flickered between me and the door she'd vanished through. I holstered my sidearm, stepping forward slowly. "What's she done? Why is she out here?" He shook his head. "It's not her fault. She found something. Something they left behind." Before I could ask more, another roar echoed from deeper inside, a mechanical clang like a gurney rolling down a ramp. We both spun. The hallway was empty, but the noise continued, receding. I frowned, then noticed a service elevator door cracked open, the interior light blinking. The call button was stuck, lit red. I told the man to stay, watched him cradle his flashlight rifle as though it could protect him. Then I moved toward the elevator, each step echoing in a vast, hollow chamber. The smell of mildew was stronger here. The metal walls were pocked with rust. A single blood droplet glistened on the floor. I leaned in, no one inside, but scratched into the metal plate on the door jamb was another message. "Doors locked from inside." My breath caught. That could only mean someone was trapped in there, alive, or had been. I reached to close the door, planning to reach in when the elevator jolted. The cables groaned, sparks bursting from the ceiling of the shaft. Then the car shot upward, disappearing into darkness with a final, echoing clang. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. The hallway lights died entirely, plunging me into inky black. I fumbled for my flashlight, clicked, but nothing. From somewhere above, the hum of electricity faded to static, then silence. My radio blared to life. "All units, west entrance, 5 possible down." And then, "No visual yet, stay alert, over." The beam of a distant searchlight swept through a window at the hall's end. I hurried toward it, passing a cracked patient room where the mattress lay shredded, springs exposed like ribs. Every door I checked was empty, until I reached the last one on the right. Inside, the wall-mounted lamp still glowed. Beneath its flicker lay the woman. She sat on the floor, back against the door, knees drawn up. Her hair fell like water over her face. In her lap, a heart monitor, its green line jagged and dying, powered by some long-dead battery. She stared at me, expression blank. I crouched. "Ma'am, are you okay?" My voice shook. She tilted her head, lips parting. Then she whispered clear as day. He never left. I froze. She repeated, voice hollow. He never left. And then she smiled. I heard distant sirens. I scooped her into my arms, pressing my radio to call medics. But even as her body went limp against me, I couldn't shake the line ringing in my ears. He never left. I carried her out. Light flooded the corridor as backup swarmed in. Faces blurred, questions jostled in my mind. Who was he? Why did she think he was still there? And what had we missed in that clinic's shadows? They loaded her into an ambulance. I stood by, flashlight in hand, shivering. I glanced back at the dark mouth of the hallway, where every shadow felt like movement. In that moment, I realized whatever haunted Westgate Clinic wasn't abroad. It was still inside, waiting for someone to set the doors free. And it would not let them go. I carried her into the ambulance bay and watched them strap her onto a stretcher, the medics murmuring reassurances I couldn't hear. My flashlight beam slashed across her pale face, so fragile, like a bird's wing. I tried to tell myself she was safe now, that this was over. But the moment I turned away, I felt that weight on my back again, the building pressing me forward. I followed the ambulance wheels as they rolled her away, every click of the hinges echoing like a warning. By the time I reached the wrecked floodlight, only its frame remained, swinging in the wind. I bit back a curse, holstering my empty flashlight, and radioed in. Unit 7 to dispatch. Subject down. Possible hostage turned patient. Bay clear. Silence. No reply. The radio crackled once, then went dead. My chest tightened. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt stranded in some half-world between the living and the long, silenced halls of Westgate Clinic. Backup was thinning out. A couple of uniformed officers were corralling the neighborhood kids who'd gathered behind the police tape, faces pale in the strobe lights. The man, who'd held a flashlight like a rifle, was being led away in handcuffs. He kept telling anyone who'd listen that he'd only come to find his sister, that she worked here decades ago and never left. The woman they'd loaded into the ambulance was his sister, he said, though she'd been dead 50 years. I stepped back, heartbeat hammering. 50 years. How could she? No, that made no sense. I closed my eyes for a moment, leaned against a cruiser, watched the steam rise from its hood in the cold night air. My jaw ached. I was still gripping the rail of the ambulance bay, fingernails digging into metal. "Lieutenant wants to see you," an officer told me. He nodded toward the front entry. I stood, brushed rain from my jacket, and trudged back through the shattered glass. The main doors slammed behind me, and I heard the whine of the air handling system kicking in. I paused. The clinic's hum was different now, like it remembered being alive. Inside, the lobby lights were on, fluorescent tubes flickering, buzzing like angry insects. A uniform stood near the overturned reception desk, holding a tablet. "Video feed's down," he said, without looking up. "The entire network's dead." I shook my head. Dead how? All the cameras looped to a frozen frame from 9/7. He tapped the screen. The image showed a nurse wheeling a gurney through the same bay I'd just left, only she never moved. "Her face is the same one you saw." My blood ran cold. I pressed closer. The timestamp read October 4th, 1997, 2:16:43. That was exactly when all of this started tonight, 28 years ago. I closed my eyes, remembering that date in someone else's voice. The girl in the bay, whispering, "He never left." A voice came over the PA. "Officer Jenkins, report to the lieutenant's office." I nodded and made my way down the hallway, past the clinic's tenants from 28 years ago, signage for outdated specialties, room numbers gouged into the wall. Everything felt frozen in amber. Lieutenant Crawford sat behind a desk assembled from scavenged filing cabinets. He looked exhausted, chewing on the end of a pen. "Report," he said without looking up. I exhaled slowly. It was worse than a trespass. We found a man dead on the trauma table, no ID. Then a teen out in the bay, precise incision, no exit wounds. 2 subjects with no connection but the same hour of disappearance. October 4th, 1997, 2:16 a.m. He rubbed his temples. Dispatch log shows only 1 call, your initial trespass report. No ambulatory call, no hostage, nothing from any other unit. I shook my head. I heard them call in and saw the footage, kids calling from their doorbell cameras when the woman showed at their doors. He finally looked up. His eyes were hollow. All those logs, calls, footage, deleted, scrubbed clean. We've got nothing in the record that confirms any of what you saw. Then how do we explain the girl we found? Her med records were in the files until a minute ago. They vanished right in front of my eyes. He placed the pen down. "We're shutting this down. You're off duty. You need rest." He tried to hand me a folder. I refused it. I shoved my hands into my pockets, fingers brushing something stiff. I pulled out the old patient chart I'd picked up earlier, date September 12th, 1997, smeared with ink that hadn't dried. I flicked it at him. He caught it, eyes flicking. "We don't know what you're playing at," he said, voice quiet. "But if you push this further, you'll be suspended." I left the office without another word. In the hallway, the clinic's lights hummed again, as if mocking my disbelief. I made it outside, the mist still hanging heavy, and lit a cigarette even though I hadn't smoked in years. The smoke clung to me and I coughed, tasting iron. I inhaled and stared up at the boarded windows. I didn't sleep that night. On the edge of dawn, I drove home, the patient chart clutched in my fist. My hands still smelled of antiseptic and dust. On my nightstand, I left the chart, but I couldn't ignore it. I took a picture on my phone and sent it to my personal email. By the time I got to work the next day, everything in my inbox was gone. The email never arrived. The file never existed. Dispatch called. "Unit 7, shift start." "Any reports?" I paused. My jaw felt tight. I straightened my tie and squared my shoulders. "Shift start," I said, all clear. But as I stepped into the precinct, I knew I'd be haunted by that frozen moment. A nurse, motionless on a gurney, the date, September 12th, 1997, and a whisper echoing down a corridor. He never left, and neither would I. My nightmares didn't end when I clocked back in. I woke in my patrol car, head against the wheel, heart pounding, every muscle coiled for flight. The clinic's bay doors haunted my vision, ajar, beckoning. I forced the engine to turn over, radio silent in my ears, and drove to the station, déjà vu stinging every turn of the wheel. Briefing was routine, stolen vehicles, noise complaints, but I could feel every clerk's glance when I passed the dispatch console. No one mentioned Westgate. No one looked at the empty evidence locker where I'd stashed that patient chart. My locker, though, was different. When I opened it, the chart lay there, pages splayed, ink bleeding. I snapped it shut, hands shaking. Lieutenant Crawford's office door creaked as I pushed in. He sat behind that same desk of mismatched file cabinets, blinking at a blank screen. "You all right?" he asked. His voice was threadbare. I swallowed. "I need the evidence locker log." He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Why?" "Who accessed the locker last night?" I said, voice low. He glanced at the chart still under his desk lamp. Without a word, he reached down, retrieved the locker key, and held it out. "Just be careful." I took it, felt the weight of unspoken warning. The log showed 2 entries at 3:47, my own, opening to retrieve the chart, and then one at 4:02 from an officer I didn't know. No name, just badge number 1743, no exit log. That meant whoever breached protocol never signed out. I left before he could add anything. Heading back to my locker, I passed through evidence bay, rows of shelving, each bin carefully labeled. The pale overhead lights hummed like distant engines. I approached the vault. Heavy steel doors, combination lock set to click at 90 degrees. Inside, beside dozens of unrelated items, lay the chart and a single keycard labeled Westgate Access, May 2004. May 2004. How many times had I been here since? I thought. I grabbed the card and headed for records, where medical archives of decommissioned facilities were supposedly digitized. The records clerk paused, eyebrows arching when she saw me but didn't ask. At the terminals, I slid the card into the reader. It blinked green. Access granted. Folder lists flickered. Westgate Clinic, 1990 to 2000. Westgate Psychiatric Annex, 1995 to 1999. I clicked the first. The screen filled with patient records, names, dates, discharge papers. I scrolled to September 1997. Only one entry, patient 0. Admitted September 11, 1997. No discharge recorded. No name, no notes. Below that, a file marked restricted. My pulse thrummed as I double-clicked. The screen went blank, then displayed a single line of text. If you can see this, close eyes and move on. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands trembled, and I realized I was breathing so hard I might hyperventilate. I backed out of records silently. Later that afternoon, I drove to Westgate alone. I told dispatch I was doing a site visit for code enforcement. They didn't ask questions. The chain-link fence still surrounded the property, but the padlocks had been cut, chains dangling. The campus was silent, sun-bleached, birds drifting above the roofline. I slipped through the chain and into the courtyard. Concrete paths led to entrances I'd never seen. An old air vent hissed, just the wind. I found the back entrance to the psychiatric annex. A set of double doors unlatched. Inside, the carpets had been carpet. The walls were bare, stripped of signage, but the fluorescent lights still buzzed, half alive. My flashlight's beam begged for batteries. I moved silently through the wing. Room after room contained nothing but empty beds and hooks on the walls where restraints once held patients in crisis. In the corner of one room, chalk scrawled on the wall. Objective C. CEPET 12-216. He came back. I froze. The date and time burned into my memory. I circled the room, boots echoing, no other graffiti, no footprints. Yet the words were fresh, like someone had just left them. Down the hall, a yawning door stood open. Inside, a nurse's station lay demolished, drawers torn out, monitors left shattered. On the floor glinted something beneath peeling paint. A single patient file. I knelt, heart in my throat, and picked it up. Name, Courier, Daniel. DOB, July 21, 1965. Admitted, September 11, 1997. Notes, experiencing auditory hallucinations, reported voices in vents. The next line was crossed out. September 12th, discharged at family request. Further down, in fresh ink, September 12th, 216. Event undocumented. Patient missing. I flipped the file open. Blank pages. No progress notes, no discharge paperwork. How could a facility discharge without records? A low moan tore through the corridor. I stood, jaws clenched. The air grew thick, hot. I could hear breath sucking into lungs. I followed the sound into the stairwell. My flashlight caught dust motes dancing in the shaft, then the moan again, in the vent above. I looked up. The vent grate was broken, screws missing. I could see inside, darkness. I searched for a tool to open it fully. My fingers found a crowbar left by someone who'd broken in. I wedged it under the grate and pried it loose. The metal fell with a clang that echoed impossibly loud. I climbed onto a desk, braced myself, and peered into the vent. Inside, the tunnel stretched into pitch black. Something shifted, a silhouette curled like a twitching insect. I swallowed. "Daniel?" My voice shook. "It's Officer Jenkins." Silence. Then a raspy whisper. "He's here." I scrambled down as fast as I could, adrenaline flooding. At the bottom, the grate fell behind me with a heavy thud. I heard distant footsteps on the floor above, each one slow, deliberate. I followed a side corridor to the exit doors, but they were welded shut. The windows, too, thick with grime. No escape except through the darkness I'd just left. My radio crackled. "Unit 7, what's status?" I pressed the button. "I'm inside Annex, locked in." My voice barely above a whisper. Static. No response. The corridor light flickered, then died. My flashlight, hanging by its strap, dangled at my side. I gripped it tighter and stepped forward into the void, knowing the nest of shadows held something alive, something waiting for 216. The vent moaned again. Closer now, breathing ragged. I set my jaw and moved on. My boots clicked against the concrete as I pressed deeper into the Annex's bowels, flashlight beam jittering over cracked walls and exposed rebar. The air grew colder, damper, the clammy breath of a sealed tomb. Every step tasted of rust and rot, yet beneath it lingered something sharper, metallic, like fresh blood. My chest tightened. I remembered the timestamp carved on that chalked wall. September 12th, 216, he came back. Now, those words felt like a countdown echoing through the corridors. I rounded a corner into what had once been a staff lounge. The kitchenette lay in ruin. Cabinets hung open, utensils strewn, a high chair tipped over as though tossed in anger. On the linoleum floor glinted a photograph, its edges curled by moisture. I bent to pick it up. A smiling nurse in her starched uniform, arm linked with a young man in street clothes, both beaming into the camera. I recognized her face instantly. It was the same woman I'd found in the trauma bay the other night. The one who whispered he never left. I flipped the photo over. Scrawled in ink. Marilyn Prescott and Patient Zero. September 11th, 1997. My throat closed. I shoved the photo into my pocket and scanned the room for anything else. A bulletin board overhead held faded memos. Meeting announcements for Westgate Staff Reunion, October 1997. Notices about schedule changes, but one memo stood out, yellowed and pinned at an odd angle. All staff, remember, containment protocol. 12. B must not fail, no exceptions, do not discuss, no signature. I stared at those lines, heart thundering. What kind of clinic had containment protocols? This wasn't quarantine for disease. It felt darker. From down the hallway, I heard the slow scrape of metal on tile. I swallowed, gripping my flashlight tighter. I edged back toward the stairwell door marked Staff and Maintenance Only. I'd bypassed it previously, but now it felt like the only way forward. The door hung off its hinges twisted like broken ribs. I ducked through into a narrow shaft that sloped downward, a service corridor, pipes overhead dripping water in slow drops. Each drop rang out like a bell toll, measuring the time until I found out what lurked below. The shaft smelled of mildew and something fermented, like spoiled wine. My flashlight illuminated scrawled messages on the concrete shaft walls, half erased, "Don't let him in. He hungry, help me." I pressed on, boots slipping in puddles. The corridor opened into a small chamber. The decommissioned generator room. Massive diesel engines sat cold, their belts slack. Oil-stained floors showed footprints in shifting patterns, some human, some slight and bare. A lone desk lamp lay on a control panel, its bulb cracked. I lifted it, still warm. Someone had been here recently. A soft voice whispered behind me. I whirled, flashlight carving through steam. A shape emerged. The man with the flashlight stock, the one who claimed the woman was his sister. He blinked, eyes glazed, standing in a doorway half covered by steam. In his hand, he held an old file folder labeled Prescott, Maryland. "Officer Jenkins," he rasped. "He's in the ducts." His voice wavered. "They never left. The vents. They listen." I took a step forward. "What vents? Who?" He shook his head violently. "The whispers. Marilyn heard them. Voices calling. He crawls in the shafts, comes back as them." His face contorted, equal parts fear and conviction. Containment failed here. She opened the hatch. He pointed up, and I followed his finger to a grated ceiling panel clamped by heavy bolts. I climbed atop a generator, prying one bolt with my multi-tool. The grate slid open with a groan, revealing a pitch-black tunnel. The stale air from within pressed against my face like a wet cloth. I flicked on my light. The beam vanished into smoke. Then, deep within, I saw movement. Jerking, reflexive, as though something clung to the ceiling, skittering. My heart pounded. I looked back at the man. "We need to see." He hesitated, then nodded, leading me to the edge. I shone the beam up into the tunnel. At first, I saw only dust motes drifting past the opening. Then, farther in, a figure hung inverted, a silhouette of limbs folded like a contorted doll. Its head lolled, long hair brushing metal. Light flickered on something metallic in its hand, a scalpel, gleaming. I swallowed and raised my voice. "Hey!" The sound echoed back in distant clicks, as though the tunnel itself was mocking me. The shape jerked. I watched its arms thrash, the scalpel clattered against the grate. Then it dropped. A wet thud sounded on the generator housing. I jumped back, stumbling, and the lid of the grate slatted shut with a clang so loud I thought it would wring my ears off. My flashlight swung wildly. I aimed down. The scalpel lay at my feet, blade slick with something dark, fresh. My stomach lurched. "Get out," I muttered, voice hoarse. "Now!" The man didn't move. He stared at the grate. I grabbed his arm. "Come on!" We sprinted back into the hall. The corridor lights flickered greedily and went out, swallowed by darkness. I fumbled for my radio. Dead. The man whispered, almost to himself, "He's above us now." I didn't ask what he meant. I just ran, trusting instinct over sight, following the faint glow of exit signs that buzzed weakly. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and died, leaving me clinging to the bulk of the man beside me. Cold sweat dripped down my neck. We emerged into a room I recognized, the old records office, dust-coated terminals arrayed in rows, data tapes spooled in broken cases. I bumped into a filing cabinet. Its drawer cascaded open. Inside lay rows of microfiche, tiny cards labeled with patient codes. One read PZ-001. Next to it, Pre-Service Record Confidential. I yanked it free. The fiche was blank on one side, on the other a faint imprint. A rectangle where data had been scrubbed, and then overwritten with a single line in red. Event nullified. I felt the man's breath behind me, shallow, ragged. He began. A rhythmic scraping filled the room, metal on metal coming closer. Out of the shadowed archway emerged nurses' carts, wheels turning of their own accord. They rolled toward us, rims squealing like nails on slate. I dove aside as one barreled past, missing me by inches. The man yelped, stumbling back into a steel desk. I kicked at the nearest cart's wheel. It clattered off course and collided with its neighbor. The two carts spun, sprinkling supplies. Bandages, tongue depressors, a vial of sedative tablets that skittered across the floor. I scooped up a handful of tongue depressors and gripped his hand. "Now," I hissed, and we bolted. We scrambled into an adjacent hallway. Broken floodlights revealed peeling walls and gurneys piled in a dead end. I collided with a closed door marked Administrative Wing. It wouldn't budge. The man stifled a groan behind me. Then, through the door, a scratchy voice. "Open it, please. You have to let me out." We froze. The voice was familiar, soft, pleading. I hissed to the man, "It's her." She's broken," he whispered. "Marilyn." The voice came again. "Please, I'm trapped." I pressed my palm against the cold metal. "Lie back," I told the man. We knelt, lowering our ears to the door. Something moved inside, a crash, a shudder as though shelves toppled. Then the voice, stronger. "They locked me in, said I broke protocol. I'm sorry. Let me out." My blood ran ice cold. I'd heard that voice before. I'd whispered it in my helmet when no one was listening. I backed away, hand on the man's shoulder. "He's coming," I told him. He nodded, eyes wide. Together, we retraced our steps, past the records office, back toward the main stairwell. My flashlight flickered one last time and died. We were blind as we moved, guided by memory and panic. Behind us, the carts clattered, as though a metal avalanche bore down the hallway. I counted steps to the stairwell door. 11 forward, 2 to the left. My hand hit the handle. It turned. We tumbled down the stairs into semi-darkness, landing in the lobby near the front entrance. Sunlight leaked through shattered windows, a jarring intrusion of normalcy. I fumbled for my radio. "Unit 7. Status?" Static. But somewhere in that crackle I heard a voice like my own. "He never left." I froze mid-stride. The man grabbed my arm. "We need to get you out," he said. "You're too deep." I looked back at the dark stairwell. The vents above it hissed, as though breathing. I swallowed. Without another word, we stumbled through the lobby into the morning haze, leaving behind the echo of steel carts, the scrawl on the walls, and the story that refused to end. And as the door slammed shut, I heard it once more, carried on the wind. He never left. The morning light stung my eyes like an accusation as we stumbled out of the lobby. My uniform was dust-caked and soaked through with sweat. The man beside me leaned heavily on the wall, his grip white on my arm. Behind us, Westgate Clinic's front doors clattered shut, but the building's moan seemed to follow, an anguished exhale drifting on the breeze. We'd flagged down a patrol car and he climbed in without a word. I climbed into the front seat, heart still racing. As the engine idled, I ripped off my utility belt, dropping it to the floorboard. The emergency lights stuttered overhead, blue and red, blinking against cracked glass. "Who are you?" I finally demanded, voice rough. He stared ahead, jaw clenched. "Name's Turner," he said. "John Turner. I used to work here." I blinked. "In 97? He nodded, rubbing his temple. "Transferred out a week later, said it was too much." He drew a ragged breath. "I was on night shift the night Marilyn, my sister, went missing." "I thought you said sister," I said. He closed his eyes. "She was both, nurse by day, patient by night. They said it was stress, PTSD. She'd been through Iraq as a medic, saw things. When she got back, she never left Westgate." I swallowed, staring out at the clinic facade retreating in my windshield. Containment protocol. 12B. What was that? His face tightened. They tried to hide what happened in '97, not patient care, something experimental. They brought wounded vets here for therapy, but they'd lock them in the annex vents. Studied their reactions. Marilyn found out. She tried to stop it. They locked her in. Locking a nurse in vents, I said. He gave a bitter laugh. That's why the chalk said, "Don't let him in." She was warning staff, but they didn't believe her. They thought she snapped. I pressed my palm against the steering wheel, knuckles white. So, tonight her body never found, Turner continued, voice quiet. They scrubbed the records, then the clinic shut down. Everyone moved on, except me. I reached over, resting a hand on his shoulder. The radio crackled. Unit 7, where are you? Status report. I keyed the mic. Unit 7 here, exiting Westgate. Patient in custody, no further threats. The dispatcher's voice hesitated. Affirm, 7. Proceed to station. I released the mic. The car rocked as Turner slipped into his own thoughts. I stared at the rearview mirror. Reflected in the background, the clinic silhouette loomed against the dawn sky, jagged windows like broken teeth. Turner, I said softly, Marilyn's still here. He looked up, eyes hard. I know. Why? I asked. He exhaled. I think she's trying to finish what she started, to expose them. I considered the vents, the whispering walls, the scalpel drop, the jacked carts that hunted us. Each had been her warning. Her cry for help echoed in the corridors she once walked freely. We rode in tense silence until I pulled into the precinct parking bay. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the muted whine of the cooling system. Turner unbuckled. I don't want to disappear in this, he said, voice low. But I can't let her stay trapped in there. I knew what he meant. I'd spent 2 shifts chasing shadows and half-truths. Every step deeper into Westgate's guts had felt like descending into quicksand. Yet the answers lay there, in those vents, behind those locked doors, within a truth someone had spent 28 years burying. All right, I said. Tomorrow we organize a team. SWAT, K9, bring lithium battery lights, thermal cams. We go in clean, map every shaft, seal or open what we need. He nodded once. And if we find her, or him, I clenched my jaw. We bring them out. He hesitated, then gave a small ghost of a smile. You're braver than I am. Brave's overrated, I muttered. I'm just tired of running. We strode inside together. The lieutenant's door opened before we reached it. Crawford sat behind his desk, expression unreadable. I nodded. We're going back in, I said. He steepled his fingers. No official order, no backup in dispatch. I slammed the chart on his desk. Black ink letters smeared. Containment, breach imminent. He paled. I don't need orders, I said. I'll bring what I need. He looked at Turner, then me. Finally, he exhaled. You both ride with me. I'm approving an unofficial entry, on my watch. We set the plan. Pre-dawn, minimal team, all liability disclaimers signed. As night fell again, I geared up. Ballistic helmet, breathing mask, thermal scope. Turner carried a coil of cable and crowbar. Crawford had a key ring. The original Westgate master keys, blackened by time. At 2 a.m., we rolled out. I glanced at Turner. His jaw was set, eyes locked ahead. Let's go find her, he said. Or him, I added. He nodded. Westgate Clinic's gates swung open like yawning jaws. My boots hit the pavement, crunching glass and gravel. The moon gleamed off the shattered sign, Westgate Clinic. The letters were missing now, but the message remained clear. This was the mouth of a beast. I swallowed. Inside, The corridor beyond the lobby lights was pitch black, waiting, and we stepped forward into the silence. The night air was thick as we reconvened at the clinic's rear entrance, the moon a pale witness in the sky. My gloves felt damp, and every bead of sweat on my neck seemed to freeze the moment I crossed back through those doors. Inside, the lobby lights were dead. We navigated by tactical flashlights, their beams carving narrow tunnels of illumination through dust and debris. Turner brought up the rear, the crowbar slung over his shoulder like a lifeline. Lieutenant Crawford swept his thermal scope over the corridor walls. No one spoke. The only sounds were our footsteps, the soft click of equipment, and the distant drip of water. At the end of the hall, the stairwell door stood ajar as we left it. I stooped under the frame and readied my radio. "Team moving in," I whispered. "Check your sectors." Static hissed in response, anonymized call signs replacing real names. We descended that familiar stairwell. 11 steps, 2 to the left, then another flight into the bowels of Westgate. The emergency lights flickered only when we passed, leaving us in near complete dark. My thermal picked up Turner's heat signature ahead, steady but tense. Crawford's scope picked up a second signature above us in the vents. Marilyn's body heat, lingering. I motioned to descend further. Each step took us closer to the abandoned generator room, our last clear marker before branching into unexplored shafts. The air grew colder, and the drips became faster, echoing like impatient metronomes. We passed doors marked Staff Lounge, X-ray Processing, Pharmacy, each as empty and silent as a tomb. At the bottom, we entered the generator chamber again. The doors groaned on their hinges when Crawford pushed them open. His flashlight caught the gleam of the crowbar leaning against the engine's casing. I hefted my sidearm and swept the room. The grate above lay slightly ajar, and through the sliver of opening I could see the vent shaft yawning black. My heartbeat synchronized with the drip of water from a pipe overhead. I knelt beside the grate, my flashlight scanning the ribs of pipe that marched into darkness. Turner placed his hand over mine. "I'm right behind you." I nodded and began to remove the grate bolts with the multi-tool. Sparks flew when metal screeched against metal, and for a split second the entire engine room glowed. Then darkness reclaimed us. I lifted the grate. The tunnel beyond was narrow, just wide enough to crawl in. Thick dust covered the floor, but recent footprints marred it. Bare footprints pressed deep, and beside them the scuff of steel-toed boots. I shone my light down the shaft. The tunnel stretched at least 20 feet before turning. My thermal scope showed a faint heat signature around the bend. No more than 95 degrees Fahrenheit, but unmistakably human. Turner exhaled. "That's her. No, it's him." "Stay close," I whispered. I stepped into the shaft, dropping to hands and knees. The air was dank, each breath drawing mold and decay into my lungs. The metal floor vibrated under faint mechanical thumps, like distant footsteps, but out of sync with ours. I inched forward, chest against the cold metal, heart pounding in my ears. After a few feet, I saw scratch marks on the tunnel wall, talons gouging into steel. I paused, fingertips brushing fresh metal shavings. Suddenly, a whisper curled around my ear. "Help me." I froze. The voice was muffled, distant, yet achingly familiar. "Marilyn?" I called softly. No response, only the stutter of my own breathing. Beside me, Turner's flashlight beam wavered. I heard him swallow. Then, from the darkness ahead, a ragged breath, a slow exhale that rattled the vent walls. We moved in unison, side by side, until Turner's light fell on a shape crumpled where the tunnel turned. I flicked my light to it. A woman curled in fetal position, lab coat shredded, face buried in her arms. She trembled, shoulders shaking. On the wall behind her, scrawled in charcoal, "He's hungry." I drew my sidearm. She stirred, lifting her head. Moonlight slanted through broken vents far above, illuminating her eyes, hollow, distant. Then recognition dawned in her gaze. She whispered so softly I almost missed it. "You found me." Her voice cracked. I dropped to one knee. Marilyn Prescott, it's Turner, you're safe." She shook her head. "No, he's here." She pointed deeper into the shaft. My light followed. At the far end, the tunnel was empty, but a shape pressed against the far wall, head tilted, limbs folded unnaturally. A man's silhouette, but impossibly long fingers brushing the metal, crawling like an insect. I swallowed and aimed my light. The figure froze. I took a step forward. It melted into the darkness. The tunnel ahead was absolute black. "Crawford," I whispered into my radio. "Containment breach. Tunnel Sector 2. Static. Then, "We're en route." I removed my breathing mask. The stale air was suffocating, but I needed to think clearly. Behind me, Marilyn rose unsteadily. Turner caught her, steadying her. "You don't have to stay," she murmured, voice flat. "He won't let you leave." I brushed a lock of hair from her face. "We're getting you out." Her lips twisted. "He can block doors," she said, voice low. "Seals vents." She traced the tunnel. "If we go back, he'll follow." My hand hovered over my sidearm. "What do we do?" She closed her eyes. "You have to come with me, into his lair." My heart hammered. "His lair?" She exhaled. "Where they experimented, where he changed." I glanced at Turner and Crawford. They exchanged a look, a silent question. I nodded. "Okay." Marilyn led us deeper, every step sinking into dust. The tunnel narrowed, pipes overhead dripping steadily. My flashlight caught a smear on the wall, dark brown, sticky. I swallowed. At the next bend, Marilyn paused. The vent above was crushed inward, metal twisted back like wings. Through the opening, a shaft led up, toward the surface. Light seeped faintly. "This way," she said. I reached up, pried the twisted metal aside. The opening was just large enough for me to climb. Arms shoulder-wide apart, boots scuffing the metal edge. Turner climbed after me, Marilyn last. Above, the shaft led into a sealed attic space, roof beams rotting, insulation hanging in gray clumps. I coughed from the dust. Crawford followed, thermal scanning the floor. In the far corner, a trap door lay flush with the floorboards. The hinges were intact, the latch rusty but movable. Marilyn moved beside me, trembling. "They held him here," she whispered. "Trapped inside, no windows, no sun." I lifted the trap door and pulled. It creaked open, revealing a steep ladder dropping into blackness. The air rose from below, hot and fetid. I shone my light down, metal rungs coated in grime, disappearing into a cyclopean darkness. I heard a distant wail echo from below, a low, keening sound that twisted my insides. Marilyn said, "That's him." Turner stiffened. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "He's been waiting." I swallowed and grabbed the first rung. "Stay here," I told Marilyn and Turner. "Crawford, you cover our exit." He snapped a salute, voice steady. 10-4. I descended, rungs rattling under my weight, darkness closing in behind me. The walls felt slimy. The keening grew louder. My flashlight caught metal pipes corroded with dripping fluid, rust-colored trails. Then the ladder ended at a grated floor. Beneath it, a pit of shadows. I dropped to my knees, bracing on the metal flooring. The keening came again, and I saw movement. Slumped figures pressed against the far walls, atypical shapes huddled in corners, bodies twisted. Pipes overhead looped like coils around them. and in the center a man stood, gaunt, skin stretched tight, clothes hanging in tatters, eyes sunken. He held a twisted scalpel aloft, blade pitted and stained. His head tilted as he watched me. I swallowed. "Who are you?" He cocked his head. The keening stopped. Silence. Then he spoke in a voice that echoed Marilyn's whisper. "I am him." The blade glinted in the low light. I steadied my breathing. He took a step forward, and the grated floor trembled as though he summoned the shadows to life. My sidearm clicked empty, ammo left in the pouch. I strapped it on. Heart hammering, I rose to face him. In that pit of broken dreams, beneath the broken roof, surrounded by the echoes of containment and betrayal, I realized the final showdown had begun. The air in the pit pressed against me like water. Every breath burned. He stood, motionless, scalpel in hand, eyes unreadable as the darkness behind him flickered with the dim glow of our flashlights from above. I forced myself to step forward, boots echoing on the grated floor. The shadows around him shifted, shapes stirring as though alive, the twisted remnants of the clinic's past. Figures clad in torn gowns, their heads bowed, hands pressed to walls as though listening for something beyond the silence. I cleared my throat. "Why are you doing this?" My voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the tunnel's weight. He tilted his head, blade glinting. The fragments of my training screamed at me to hold my ground, to aim, to fire. But my sidearm was empty, and no bullet could pierce what he'd become. He took a slow step toward me. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. In the low light, I could see the rawness of his skin, pulled tight where he'd clawed at himself. Raw, red patches and scars, crisscrossing like a map of relentless obsession. Every incision, every stitch left exposed and jagged. He lifted the scalpel, wavering like a conductor's baton calling the orchestra of ghosts that pressed closer, their hollow moans rising in a chorus of anguish. Marilyn's voice crackled through the grate behind me. "Don't let him close the distance." I suppressed the urge to turn. Her warning echoed my own fear. If he reached me, the line between captor and captive would vanish. I raised my hands, palms outward, voice steadying with a thin veneer of control. "I'm here to end it, to bring you out." He paused, the scalpel's tip catching a stray beam of light, reflecting a shard of cold steel. Then, ever so slowly, he lowered the blade. The chorus of wails around us stilled, every head leveling in silent anticipation. I inhaled. This ends tonight. No more games, no more hiding. His lips curled into something like a smile, an expression warped beyond warmth. He raised the scalpel again, not in threat, but to trace a line in the air between us. With the tip, he drew an invisible boundary, from my left shoulder across my chest to my right arm. I flinched as though struck. In that instant, the grate above rattled. Turner's frantic voice filtered down. "Officer Jenkins, status. We're breaching." Lieutenant Crawford's silhouette appeared through the vent hatch. Spotlight trained on the scene. Figures behind him. K-9 handlers, medics, backup officers, swarmed down the ladder. The shadows recoiled as each beam found the pit's corners, banishing the remnants that clung to the darkness. He looked up, eyes flicking between me and Crawford, then at the squad pouring in. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The wailing spirits, the hiss of the ducks, the drip of water overhead, all suspended. Then the scalpel dropped. It clanged against the grate, bouncing into my boot. I stepped forward, heart pumping like a war drum, and reached down, retrieving it. It was lighter than I expected, cold steel with a blade dulled by age, stained with rust and dried fluid. I held it out to Marilyn first. She hesitated, then took it, tears on her cheeks. She traced her fingers over the handle, eyes distant. Crawford moved beside me. "Is this safe?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. "It's over." Turner knelt by Marilyn's side, wrapping his arms around her. She sobbed, resting her head on his shoulder. The wailing chorus of the clinic's dead faded, replaced by the urgent murmur of radios and the scuff of boots on metal. The pit, once alive with unseen terror, felt hollow now, emptied of its power. Paramedics guided Marilyn up the ladder, Turner close behind. Crawford and I were the last to leave, stepping into the generator room's cavernous emptiness. I set the scalpel on a ledge, its blade pointing outward, as though marking the boundary between what had happened and what would come next. Behind us, officers sealed the shaft. Each bolt torqued home with a promise. Never again. We documented every detail, logged the vanished records that re-emerged in our cameras, and watched as the clinic's hidden lab files, once scrubbed clean, were recovered from digital backups. By dawn, Westgate Clinic was silent but secured. The breeze through broken windows carried the scent of damp earth and new beginnings. I stood on the front lawn, watching Marilyn, Turner, and Crawford walk away, 3 silhouettes against a pale sky. I turned back to the building one last time. Corridors of peeling paint, flooded bays drained of dread, vents emptied of their whispers. The sun rose, cutting through the haze, unveiling the scars the clinic would carry for decades to come. I exhaled, letting the morning air fill my lungs. I'd walked through shadows, faced the things officers don't report, and drawn a line through fear itself. Yet, as I stepped forward, I realized some darkness never truly leaves. He never left. Nor did the question that now haunted every silent hallway I'd walked. Who was real, and who was merely waiting for us to believe in the dark? I slipped into the lot behind the old Hartman Memorial at 0013, my boots crunching gravel where the chain-link fence had been cut. The contractor's guard glared at me from under the brim of his cap, face mapped by headache shadows. "Heard something in radiology," he said, voice tight as barbed wire. Sounded like slow scraping. I nodded once, clipped my flashlight to my vest, and crossed under the flickering sodium lamp. The long ambulance bay was half swallowed by kudzu vines. I followed footprints in the mud, one pair, size 9, dragging hesitantly between broken concrete slabs. I drew the beam across rusted gurneys piled beside the loading dock. Each cart leaned at a different angle, as if frozen mid-collapse. The air smelled of mold and old bleach. Something sharp, metal on tile, echoed deep inside. I radioed dispatch, voice steady. 4 Alpha to dispatch. I'm inside the bay, no sign of forced entry. I'm proceeding to radiology corridor. Inside, the sliding glass door was propped ajar. I went through, gun low, light angled to catch movement. The lobby was empty, save for a reception desk half buried in ivy that had grown through cracks in the floor. Filing cabinets lay toppled, cabinet doors hanging like gaping mouths. A pale whine came from down the hallway. My heart caught. No way that was wind. Not in here. I edged forward, past rooms where surgical gloves still lay in faded boxes stamped sterile, their corners yellowed. The first door on the right, labeled XRAY, stood open. I checked the frame, no lock engaged. The beam lit up an overturned table, lead aprons dangling like curtains. I followed the sound, a slow, metallic scrape. It came from further on, behind 2 closed doors marked MRI and CT. When I reached the double doors, I heard the scrape again, a rasping whisper against tile. My finger tightened on the trigger guard, but I kept my voice low. Officer with Hartman PD. If anyone's in there, step into the light. Footsteps answered. Bare, dragging. Then silence. My flashlight captured a glint on the tinted window. I pressed my palm against the cool glass and peered inside. The MRI chamber was empty, discs of machine silence. But on the floor, a long strip of plastic film trailed into darkness beyond the machine. X-ray film, half exposed, creeping toward a side door marked storage. I slipped outside the room to radio for backup. Dispatch, I have possible trespasser in radiology. It's not on camera feed. Please send Unit 4 Bravo. No response except static. The film strip twisted around my boot. I tugged and it came loose. Coated in something sticky, dark. My glove left a print. I glanced at my hand. Black smear that wouldn't wipe clean. I flicked the beam back to the door handle. Fingerprints already smudged, as if someone had been there, waiting for me to find it. Backing away, I caught sight of movement at the corridor's far end, past the CT door. 2 frames ahead, the beam of another flashlight flickered, then vanished. I called out, and footsteps answered from the glass-doored nurse's station. Someone crawling on all fours. I dropped to one knee, training my light where the wall had collapsed. The station's window was cracked. Behind it, laminated staff IDs littered the desk. Names erased, photos scratched. A heavy wooden drawer was open. Inside, paper reports jumbled. Some typed, then crossed out by hand. "No one's supposed to be here," I said softly. The crawling silhouette paused. I tried to read the shape, just the dark curve of a hooded jacket. Then it vanished deeper into the wing. I stood, heart hammering, and followed the sound of rough hands scraping along painted walls. The hall lights above flickered, long streaks of darkness baking each bulb. At the end, the hallway forked. Left led to the psychiatric wing, right back toward the lobby. The footsteps trailed left. I radioed again, voice clipped. "Backup ETA?" No answer. My cam light glowed, then dimmed. Its battery indicator blinked red. I cursed under my breath. Fresh batteries were supposed to last a full shift. I reached for my phone to capture the film and the IDs, but it slipped in my hand, clattering to tile. The impact sent a crack of static through my earpiece, then silence. I followed the corridor to the psychiatric wing entrance. The doors were sealed by a rusted padlock, chain eaten by corrosion. Footprints in dust led up to the lock. Someone had closed it behind them. I leaned in, listening. A slow, rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat, but hollow. From inside, dim lantern light pulsed against the frosted glass. I tried the doors, locked tight. I slammed my shoulder into the frame. Wood and metal rattled, but held. The noise stopped. All at once, silence pressed against my eardrums. I drew my sidearm. "This is Officer Myers. I'm entering," I said, palm trembling. I rammed the door again. Chain snapped and clattered to the floor. The doors swung inward with a creak that echoed for miles. I entered the cell block. Rows of empty rooms, each door hanging open, revealing nothing but darkness. But at the opposite end, a door was closed, knob turning slowly of its own accord. I approached, every nerve alight. When I got close, the knob stopped spinning, and the door fell silent. I cleared my throat, ready to announce. Then my flashlight beam caught movement behind me. I spun around. Footprints now trailing back toward the lobby, covered in the same black film. I followed them until they stopped at a railcar door just beyond the nurse's station. The door was dented inward, as if pushed from inside. At that moment, dispatch crackled to life. "Unit 4 Alpha, we have visuals on your cam. Something's down your hallway." My light swung back. The beam captured a figure standing in the corner. A middle-aged woman in scrubs, face pale, eyes blank. Behind her, the wall was splattered with shapes that looked like patient records, stapled in place and dripped in shadow. She stood too still, hands at her sides. I called out, "Ma'am, medical staff?" No response. Her lips moved, like she was mouthing words, but no sound. I swallowed, mouth dry, and took a step forward. My boot crunched on glass. The figure flicked her head up, staring at me, but her eyes were gone, dark holes. I fired one warning shot at the ceiling. The echo bounced in ragged pulses. She didn't flinch. Then, behind her, the door I'd forced open slammed shut. The thump made every rafter vibrate. My cam feed cut out again. In the sudden dark, the only light came from her dull silhouette. I felt my radio slip off my shoulder as I reached for it. When I looked back, she was gone. Just empty hallway, walls strewn with soaked paper. I backed toward the door, pressed my shoulder against it. It gave. I spilled into the radiology lobby and slammed it shut behind me. The padlock dropped into my palm. My breath ragged, I heard the echo of labored breathing in the wing behind me, and the faint scrape of paper across tile. I locked the door, jammed a gurney against it, and radioed in. "I've secured the wing. No sign of injured person, possible trespasser or vagrant. I'm okay, but something's not right. I need a full sweep, hazmat and forensics." My words sounded hollow, even to me. I stepped into the ambulance bay, heart still pounding, and saw the guard's flashlight trained on the locked radiology doors. He said, "Sir, what happened in there?" I didn't answer. I just held up my gloved hand, black smear across the palm. The guard's eyes went wide. I told him, "Let's just wait for backup." And as I stood under the broken floodlight, the doors behind me creaked, like a door that shouldn't open, swinging on rotted hinges. I didn't move from that spot for what felt like an eternity, just listening to the lock clicking shut and the soft scrape of that gurney sliding against the door in the radiology wing behind me. The guard's beam swept the ambulance bay, cutting across my hand, black smudge standing out against the white glove. He swallowed, scanning the bay twice before he whispered, "Backup's 2 minutes out. They'll radio when they arrive. You okay, sir?" I forced a nod, even though every muscle in my body yelled to run back and check on that door. Instead, I took a steadying breath and clamped the padlock around the handles, twisting it until it seated. The guard pressed a pane of his light against the chain-link fence where it had been cut. The gap was only a foot wide, but I saw muddy footprints leading out toward the road. Whoever, or whatever, had been here left through that breach. I turned and walked back into the lobby, boots echoing on cracked tile. The reception desk was draped in ivy, but the green leaves looked sickly under my flashlight, as if dying by slow degrees. Filing cabinets lay on their sides, drawers dragged across the floor, gouging grooves into the tile. I picked up a fallen drawer handle. It was the only piece left of that cabinet. No metal, just plastic coated in dust, and a smear of that same black film. My radio crackled. 4 Bravo rolling in. ETA 30 seconds. The guard exhaled sharply, as though he'd been holding his breath. I answered, "We've contained the West Wing, no injuries so far. I need hazmat on standby, possible contamination. Forensics, too, if they can process in the dark." My voice sounded distant. In the instant before the first patrol car's headlights fell across the bay, I glanced back at the radiology doors. They stood locked tight, gurney braced against them like a makeshift barrier. The metal coughed under the strain, bending inward at the bottom. My mind replayed that figure in scrubs, pale, motionless, eyes hollow. I shook off the image by stepping outside to meet the newcomers. 2 officers hopped out, Corporal Hayes and Officer Diaz, flashlights drawn, weapons holstered. Their beams swept the ambulance bay. Diaz's caught on the gurney. "What the hell?" he muttered. I pointed back, toward the sealed doors. "Something inside that wing," I said. "I need you both to secure the perimeter. No one in or out. Check that fence breach and set up a staging area here." Hayes nodded, pulling on latex gloves. Diaz tapped his mic. "All units, cordon off Hartman structure. No civilian traffic. Stand by for hazmat." His voice felt small in the empty lot. I turned back to the lobby, picking up where I left off. The beam landed on the receptionist's desk, ivy weaving through computer cables. I crouched to examine the outlet strips. Each cable was severed at the plug, frayed wires fanned like exposed roots. No scorch marks, but the plastic smelled faintly of ozone. I snapped a photo with my phone. The file didn't save. I checked again, memory full, despite clearing it last week. My throat tightened. I pocketed the phone and straightened, shining light down the corridor to radiology. The locked doors gleamed, padlock glittering with rust. The gurney's wheels quivered, as if nudged by something on the other side. Footsteps echoed behind me. I spun to see Sergeant Bryce and 2 more officers hustling toward me. Bryce's face was set in concern, though he tried to mask it. "Myers, what's the situation?" he asked. I gave him a quick rundown. "Contractor guard hears scraping. Radiology sealed from inside. Figure in scrubs vanishing. Cam feed failure. Black film residue. Wiped files." Bryce's jaw clenched. "All right, you did good. Got everyone here fast. We'll get hazmat up first. Forensics next." He glanced at the breach in the fence. "I want perimeter swept. Hayes, Diaz, you're on that. Myers, Bryce, inside." He lifted his flashlight and led the way toward the radiology doors. We passed through the lobby into the bay, cutting our way around that patched-up gap in the chain link. The padlock and gurney were exactly where I'd left them, but now Bryce counted the wheels. A spare had tilted off one side. Unnerved, I ran my fingers along the bar, an impression pressed into the paint, as though something heavy leaned against it. The metal was warm, despite the night air. I glanced at the lock. The latch was partially unlatched, though the chain still held. My stomach twisted. Bryce saw my face. "Stay sharp," he said. I swallowed and nodded. He gave me the bolt cutters. "On 3, he whispered. We squeezed the handles. The chain split with a muffled crack. Bryce yanked the doors inward, and we stepped into radiology. Immediately the smell hit me. A chemical tang, like fresh brewed bleach mixed with rust. My light beam caught the torn X-ray film strewn across the floor, dried into sticky, overlapping loops. The walls were streaked with handprints, smudged black lines climbing toward the ceiling. Bryce shone his light at the door to the MRI room, now wide open. Behind it, the chamber's silver drum lay empty, no footprints inside. A single glove lay on the rack. Bryce signaled for me to stay by the film. He went to inspect the glove. I watched as he nudged it with his flashlight, but it didn't move. No gust of wind, no aftershock from the bay doors opening. He picked it up with tweezers and tucked it into an evidence bag. The black film on the X-rays crackled under his boot heel. I followed his beam up the corridor, an uneven line of flickering ceiling lights above, alternating glow and dead. Each glow swallowed the next before we could step under it. I felt exposed, like standing naked under a strobe. We called in for forensic techs and hazmat. Backup arrived, van with amber lights, containment suits, respirators. I backed out of the MRI room and stood near the base of the nurse's station window. Forensics waved us over. The tech wore a full-body suit, pulling on gloves. His partner laid down a plastic sheet over the dusty floor. I knelt by the reporter's station. Staff IDs still pinned to corkboard, photos scratched beyond recognition. I lifted one sheet of laminated paper, no text visible, just a faint watermark. Forensics officer groaned. This isn't going to come back from a wipe down. He scanned the IDs again, then shook his head. Names erased intentionally. These archives have been tampered with. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the desk. There was a dull hum under the flashing lights. The MRI machine rebooting itself down the hall, or perhaps something else awakening. I poked at the X-ray film draped across the floor. It peeled up like old wallpaper, revealing a line of shallow scratches scored into the tile. No blood, just grooves worn thin, as though someone crawled on knees dragging film behind them. I took out a pen and marked the lines so photography could pick them up later. When I looked up, the corridor was empty, silent, every door in place. The quiet shriek in my ears matched my pulse. Bryce clapped me on the shoulder. Let's secure this wing. We've got enough evidence for court and hazard mitigation. He picked up a clipboard and leafed through his notes. I realized then that I hadn't begun my own report. My mind circled back to the figure, scrub-clad, eyes blank, and the endless rows of empty patient rooms in the psych wing, waiting for me to open that door. I hadn't seen it leave. Maybe it didn't. I shoved that thought away and started to outline the contamination zone. Radiology wing, rooms 1 through 12, ambulance bay. But my words felt hollow on the paper. The station wall behind me creaked in the draft, making the IDs pinned there tremble. Forensics bagged discarded reports, each page stiff, half-stamped, archived, destroy after 30 days. Pages that disappeared months ago reappeared here tonight. That knowledge pressed against my lungs. What routine procedure, from tear out old files to destroy paper, had gone so wrong that someone used the hospital to play hide-and-seek with its own records? Why leave them here to bleed black fluid into the tile? In the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a movement, a thin shape slipping around the banister of the nurse's station. It paused twice, then vanished toward the psych wing stairs. I whirled, but there was nothing. Just my reflection in the broken glass of a window. My radio crackled. "Myers, what's your status?" I answered, voice catching. Containment in place, no further sightings so far. But I heard the ragged intake of breath behind me. I spun again. The nurse's station door stood open, pitch black inside. The IDs on the wall shivered, though the air was still. Bryce noticed. "Something on the other side?" he asked. I swallowed. "Yeah, I thought I saw someone." He frowned. "All right, Hayes, sweep those stairs. 2-man team." Hayes and Diaz suited up and climbed toward the landing. The beam from Diaz's light caught the stair treads, each one lined with narrow scratches, then a single fresh footprint in dust. Boot print, size 8.5. I knelt to examine it. Gloved hand indented the print, though nothing else lay in the dust. No debris, no fiber. Just that one print pointing toward the psych wing's upper floor. The wind outside gusted through the cut fence, making the lights flicker. The MRI machine whirred to life, a low, mechanical growl from behind the double doors. The team paused on the stairs, flashlight beams trembling across peeling paint, locked rooms. I climbed after them, feeling my sidearm heavy at my hip. Each step groaned underfoot, like the building protesting our presence. We reached the door at the top, the only closed cell door in the block. No nameplate, just a streak where a tag had been torn off. The same scrub figure must have come here, and now stood waiting behind this door. The scratches on the tile below matched the pattern on the stairs. I drew a breath and knocked. No answer. My flashlight beam caught a glint through the narrow window. A pair of shoes, bare toes peeking from the sole, unmistakably human. I turned to the team. On 3, we breach. We rammed the door together. It burst open into a small room with a single cot, sheet folded neatly. The vents overhead rattled, air flowing despite the power cut to the wing. My beam caught the cot, blue, scrubs-like fabric folded at the foot. Under it, a dark smear led toward the corner. The silhouette of a body was gone, but the pressure imprint and dust remained. Contour of legs, torso, arms splayed wide. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Bryce's voice, low. "No one here." I swallowed against a lump. "She was here," I said, pointing at the imprint. "She left just now." Bryce shone his light at the corner. Nothing, no footprints, no exit path, only that stillness as though the bed itself exhaled. I tapped my radio, voice hollow. "Unit 4 Alpha. No one found on upper floor." Print on stairs, imprint in cell. No suspect, possibly contaminated. Repeat, no suspect. The cry of a metal door slamming echoed below. We froze. Hayes shouted, "Back door! West exit!" We ran down the stairs, boots thundering. At the bottom, the ambulance bay doors were swinging open, cold air slicing in. Outside, the fence breach had 2 sets of fresh prints now, mine and one other's. They headed off into the lot, toward the road, and disappeared into weeds. The hospital's broken floodlight overhead sputtered, then died. Darkness swallowed us. I radioed, "All units. Suspect sighted leaving West Breach. Pursuit on foot." No response. The comms were dead. We spilled out into the yard, chest heaving. The guard was gone. The contractor's van lights were still on but empty. The fog rolling off the pavement smelled like stale antiseptic. We swept the fence line. Nothing. No glimmer of a jacket, no footprints leading away. Just the quiet hiss of grass against metal. I put my hand in my pocket. My phone still missing from the lobby. The only thing I had was my cam, dead, and the memory of that imprint in the psychiatric cell. I glanced at the hospital entrance. Radiology doors locked behind us, walls black as spilled ink. The night felt suddenly alive, breathing around the old building. I marched back toward the main entrance, leaving the corridor and stairwell and the rooms full of silent patient charts behind me, each page a question with no answer. And as I crossed under the broken floodlight, I realized the air had warmed, and the smell of bleach vanished, replaced by something like old sweat and regret. I looked down at my gloved hand. The black film had spread, creeping up my wrist like ink climbing paper. I flexed my fingers. The smear broke into cracks. I whispered into my radio, "Hazmat, hold your position. Something's leaking." No one answered. The guard's flashlight appeared at the entrance steps, beam wide and unsteady. He stumbled down and looked at me, eyes reflecting my own exhaustion. I took his helmet off to reveal his sweat-damp hair. "You seen anyone?" he asked. I shook my head. "Just me," I said. "And this place." Behind us, the old hospital's windows glowed with borrowed light, each pane reflecting the empty bay. And I knew, whatever had walked these halls tonight, it wasn't done with the Hartman Memorial. The darkness inside was thicker now, and I was the only one left to keep its secrets. I squared my shoulders and stepped back toward the lobby, leaving the ambulance bay's cold night air for the stale chill of the disused clinic. My boot heels clacked over tile that still bore the imprint of where that gurney had wedged itself against the radiology door. The forensics techs hovered at the entrance, their hazmat suits hissing faintly with each breath. I pointed down the main corridor. I want a full sweep of that hallway. Every patient room, janitor's closet, maintenance shaft. Look for footprints, fingerprints, any sign our visitor carried in or out anything. Film, PPE, tools. The lead tech, Moran, nodded and signaled his team into motion. I moved past the reception desk, where the ivy crept further in the darkness, leaves snapping when the overhead bulbs flickered. I pulled my flashlight free and followed the beam up the corridor toward the old blood draw station. The sink faucets were still mounted to the wall, though no water had flowed for years. The stainless steel was pitted, edges jagged with corrosion. One faucet handle swung slowly when I brushed past, squeaking like a protest. I flicked my light to the tile floor. Muddy footprints led from the sink to the door marked Storage A, the one I hadn't checked yet. The prints were small, size 7 at best, and the mud was damp, unlike the rest of the bay's dry earth. Whoever left them must have tracked in soil from somewhere I hadn't seen. I crouched, took off my glove and pressed a fingertip into the sole. The mud gave, leaving a clear ridge. I lifted my glove and tucked it into an evidence bag on my belt. Then I stood and put my light against the door frame. Storage A was a supply closet. Empty shelves, dust-coated, except for a single box of surgical masks, torn open and scattered on the floor. The masks curled with yellowing edges. I snapped a photo of the box's label. Expiration dates from 1994. Behind it sat an overturned janitor's bucket, its handle bent. The mop head was missing. I panned upward to the ceiling vent above the door, its grill dislodged, ductwork yawning in darkness. Something scraped inside the vent. I froze. The sound was faint but clear, metallic claws dragging across duct metal. My throat tightened. I radioed Moran. "Vents and storage. A. Possible access point. Get me a ladder and camera." No response. Calm traffic, busier now. Hazmat team sealed the lobby. Forensics fanned out. I holstered my weapon and pulled out my phone. Battery dead. I tossed it in frustration. This wing was eating electronics tonight. I kicked the bucket aside and swept the surgical masks into a pile. Beneath them lay a stained piece of paper. I picked it up with a gloved hand, a torn fragment of a patient chart, handwritten. The name scrawled was crossed out 3 times. Underneath, someone had penciled an alternate name. R.M., no date, no signature. The paper was damp and soft. I slid it into a plastic evidence sleeve. The moment I did, the overhead bulbs stuttered and died, plunging the hallway into a deep hush. My flashlight was the only light. I could see Moran's silhouette fumbling toward me, ladder in hand. He whispered, "What is it?" I showed him the vent and the chart. He exhaled through his respirator. "We'll get this vent open, thermal cam too, see if anyone's in there." I nodded. As he climbed, I noticed another wet footprint at the base of the ladder, same size 7. No matching print in the dust outside. This wing had only one entrance, the bay doors. The psych wing, MRI, CT, they were sealed or locked behind me. Moran triggered the thermal cam. The screen flickered to life, and a heat signature pulsed inside the shaft, faint but unmistakably human. My pulse spiked. "Get a capture," I said. He focused the cam. The image glowed a pale, orange streak about 4 feet inside the vent, length maybe 6 inches. Then it vanished. The cam feed went dark. Moran cursed and climbed down. "Align the ladder," he said. We swapped positions. I clambered up, pried at the grill with my flashlight. It popped free, falling into my arms. I shone the beam inside, black, empty metal, tight enough for someone to crawl, but no air movement now. I straddled the opening and leaned forward, voice low. If you're in there, you're violating 2913.02. That's felony trespass. Come out." Nothing. Only the faint drip of condensation somewhere down the line. I reached in with my gloved hand, felt a hard edge about a foot in, maybe duct support. My fingers grazed a folded sheet of paper wedged in a bracket. I tugged it out. Another chart fragment, this one stamped confidential, discard, with a date. May 14th, 1998. I glanced at the date. It was before the hospital closed. Underneath was a handwritten note. "She's still here. They can't know." My stomach clenched. I pressed my flashlight against the paper. The ink smeared in spots. No other marks. What did "still here" mean? I crumpled the paper into my evidence bag. Then I slipped my hand deeper and felt cool air at my wrist. Draft from somewhere ahead. I pressed my palm against the vent ceiling. It warmed under my glove. A heartbeat? Impossible. I struck the grill once, twice. No answer. Then a slow rustle, like cloth brushing metal, from deeper inside. I slid down the ladder and landed on my feet hard, drawing a sharp breath. Moran and I exchanged glances. "Wall's clear," he said. "We'll need a maintenance team to pull the ductwork." I nodded. "Mark it off." Behind us, the hallway was repopulated with forensic techs, their lights bobbing. I moved back toward the lobby to regroup with Bryce. My gloves left smears on the wall, like breadcrumbs leading back to that vent. I cursed softly and wiped them on a rag lying on a shelf. In the lobby, Bryce was conferring with the hazmat lead. He waved me over. "Got your prints," he said, holding up a small tablet. 7 prints, only match your right index from when you checked under the vent." He sighed. "No other matches. No prints from the fence either. Whoever's here is cleaning up after themselves, except for those chart pieces." He tapped the tablet. "Digital records show those files as destroyed 15 years ago. So we're dealing with someone who can access the sealed archives and uses vents to move unseen." I rubbed my temples. My head felt tight as a vice. "Or someone who used to work here," I said. "Has knowledge of the building's architecture." Bryce nodded. "I'll update dispatch, tell them suspect's likely former staff, maybe a disgruntled ex-employee or caretaker. We'll query HR archives." I swallowed. "And we'll watch the vents," I added. Before he could answer, the hazmat lead called us back. "Containment breach. Radiation detector just tripped in CT room." I exchanged a look with Bryce. The CT suite had lead shielding. No one had run that machine in decades. We hurried back down the radial vestibule toward CT. The doors were sealed, but the hazmat team had pried them open. Inside, the room smelled of ozone and warmth. The CT gantry was humming, lights blinking as if on standby. My radio speakers crackled. "Officer Myers, CT radiation levels spiking at 3.2 millisieverts per hour. Evacuate immediately." I slammed the door shut as the hazmat, suit-wearing techs retreated. The speckled pattern of CT tube housing glowed under the beam. There was no power source. Cables were cut at the panel. And yet the gantry spun slowly, as if someone set it to auto-run. I pressed my ear against the door. Faint hum, a mechanical heartbeat. I radioed, "CT suite, power anomaly. Recommend immediate decommissioning." The radio sputtered back, "Copy. Technician en route." I backed out into the corridor and caught Bryce's eye. He nodded, then noticed my glove. The black film had spread further, streaking my fingers like claw marks. He frowned. "You all right?" I wiped at it half-heartedly. It smeared but wouldn't disappear. "I've been touching vents," I said. "Something's leaching." Bryce's face paled. "Get that decon line." He motioned to hazmat. I exhaled and turned away. As I walked back to the lobby, I heard the CT suite's hum trail down the hallway behind me, growing fainter. It merged with the distant rumble of the MRI powering back up, and the soft scrape of something shifting inside a locked patient room. I paused under the broken ceiling tile where the ivy had nearly breached. The corridor looked longer, darker. I shook my head and radioed dispatch one more time. Myers. Incident update. Radiology vent intrusion, contaminated chart fragments, CT power anomaly, suspect unknown, requesting full SWAT support and structural engineers, over. The radio fell silent. I clipped it back to my belt and flicked off my flashlight, stepping into the gloom so that only the faint glow from the lobby spilled into the corridor. My breath echoed. In that hush, I thought I heard low melodic humming, like a lullaby drifting from the psych wing. I froze. The wings had become a maze tonight. Vents, ducts, shafts, hidden crawl spaces, and somewhere deep inside, someone, or something, was still pacing, watching, waiting for the walls to close in. I exhaled, squared my shoulders, and advanced toward the psych doors. The humming grew louder, a fractured melody that wound through the ceiling panels. My boots were soft on the tile now, every footstep measured. I crossed the threshold of the sealed doors and flicked on my light. Silence. Only the hum remained. I followed it into the cell block, past empty rooms. Then, at the far end, a single cell door stood latched, humming louder than the rest. I raised my light. The nameplate was gone, scratched off. The latch rattled on its own, beckoning. My radio buzzed to life, distorted, urgent. "Myers, you copy?" I swallowed and pressed my palm to the door's cold steel. The humming stopped. For a moment, the world held its breath. And then I turned the knob. I eased the door open and stepped into the cell's narrow rectangle of stale air. My flashlight beam swept the concrete floor, bare except for a single shoe print, size 7, pressed into a thin layer of dust. No footprints beyond it. The walls were painted institutional gray, peeling in places to reveal rust stains beneath. A small barred window high on the far wall offered a sliver of moonlight, illuminating a metal cot bolted to the floor. The mattress lay neatly folded, as though nobody had used it in years. Yet it smelled faintly of sweat and something acrid I couldn't place. I swallowed and advanced, mindful of each footstep. The cell door clicked shut behind me, metal grinding in the frame. I whipped my light across the walls and noticed them for the first time. Tiny pinpricks of ink, scribbled words and symbols etched into the concrete. I crouched to read one cluster at eye level. I heard them breathing in the vents. They know my name now. Beneath it, a series of tally marks. 27 striations in uneven rows, each stroke gouged into the plaster like a fingernail. My mouth went dry. I stood and shone the beam upward, tracing the wires that led to a round speaker plate in the ceiling. It was cracked, as if someone had pried it. Silence. The last thing I'd want right now was an intercom that still worked. I crouched again by the cot. Its frame was cold to the touch. I ran my fingers along the mattress's seam, fresh indentations, like someone had knelt and leaned into the bars. I swept my light to the cot's foot. A journal lay wedged between the mattress and frame, its leather cover scuffed. I hesitated, then reached in and drew it out. The binding was brittle. The first page contained a hastily scribbled confession. I can't sleep. The machines whisper my name. I tried to leave, but the doors lock themselves. The vents are alive. The handwriting was shaky, spidery. I flipped pages. They detailed staff rounds from years ago, routine checks, medicine inventory, comforting patients. Then the entries descended into panic. May 15th. I saw her standing at the nurse's station. No uniform, just skin stretched too tight. May 16th, Hammond didn't come back. They said homicidal. I said they were wrong. May 17, the light in the CT room pulsed at night. I swear I heard him calling. May 18, I can't leave. The doors are locked. The intercom cracks. They're summoning me. My pulse throbbed in my throat. I heard the faintest rustle, a soft drag of fabric against tile, coming from the corridor outside the cell. I spun, beam slicing the darkness through the bars. Nothing. Just the long hallway disappearing into shadow. I opened the journal to the last entry, where the pages smeared and the ink ran. They know. I'm next. I slammed the book shut, heart hammering. My radio hissed to life in my pocket. Myers? Status? It was Bryce, voice clipped. We're making headway. Chopper en route for thermal sweep. Any sign on your end? I cleared my throat. I'm in a cell. Evidence of a former staff's descent into whatever this is. I realized how that sounded. Officer trapped in psychiatric cell, possible entrapment protocol from years ago. I shook my head. I'm okay for now. Journal found. Intercom dead. Cell doors opened on their own. 2 hours ago. Silence crackled back. Understood. Extract ASAP. I slid the journal into an evidence sleeve. Then I shone my light on the tally marks again. 27. I glanced at the calendar on my phone earlier. It was the 27th. A chill slid down my spine. I raised my light upward toward the speaker plate. The metal grill quivered, then fell inward with a soft clatter. I backed into the cot, weapon drawn, training the beam into the newly exposed ceiling cavity. Darkness beyond. A draft sifted through the opening, carrying with it a faint hiss, like someone whispering into a pillow. I pressed my ear to the bars. A voice, distant, male, raspy. You shouldn't be here. The words dissolved into static. I snapped back, breathing hard. My radio crackled urgently. Myers, evacuation in 2 minutes, hazmat orders. I answered. Copy that. I'll meet you in the lobby. I holstered my weapon, reached through the bars, and turned the latch. It yielded with a smooth click, unlocked, just like that. I hadn't touched it. My hand shook as I opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The tally marks were gone, erased from the wall. Not a single scratch remained. I swung my light around. The hallway looked pristine, the vents sealed, no sign of scribbles or footprints. The CT and MRI doors were closed, lights off. I called out, voice echoing. Hello? Bryce? Only silence answered. I walked swiftly, the journal clutched under my arm. The ivy at the lobby entrance reached farther inside, leaves brushing my jacket. I pushed through and found Bryce crouched by the reception desk, forensics beside him. He glanced up. You good? I nodded, lowering the journal onto the desk. Something in the psych cell. He looked at the journal bag. We got drone access to vents. They mapped multiple crawl spaces. At least 3 people could move around unseen. I swallowed. And intercom lines are still live. He frowned. Suddenly, a soft melody drifted from the vents above. Something like a lullaby, twisted by static. It rose and fell, faint as a child's hum. Bryce's eyes widened. I paced to the center of the lobby, light sweeping the windows. This place isn't done with us. The lullaby stopped. Then the overhead bulbs flickered and one shattered, sending glass tinkling across the tile. Bryce and I ducked as shards rained down. In the dim strobe, we saw a figure, lean, hooded, dart across the ambulance bay doors and vanish into the night. Bryce cursed. There, he went through the breach. I hit my radio. All units, suspect just exited West Breach. Pursue on foot. No reply. My radio was dead again. I looked down at my gloved hands. The black film had returned, streaking my palms. I rubbed them on my pants. It smeared across the fabric like oil. I exhaled, heart pounding. I have the journal, I said to Bryce. We'll figure out who wrote it and why they stayed. He nodded and led me toward the lot. Outside, the air was thick with humidity and the distant shriek of sirens. The fence breach yawned like a wound. I peered into the darkness beyond, half expecting to see glowing eyes. Instead, only the embrace of the night. I slipped the journal into my pocket and stepped out through the breach, closing the chain link behind me. The hospital loomed, windows dark, sentinel in the fog. I looked back once, hand on the fence. Somewhere inside, the walls still whispered. I knew I'd return, because someone needed to hear the rest of the story. But tonight I left with questions, unanswered, unresolved, and one final lingering thought. Who else answered that lullaby?